Hey folks, this is Dr. David. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. We're just wrapping up some last minute technical stuff and we'll be getting underway. So I see lots of people filing in and I'm working. Hey folks, this is Dr. David. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. We're just And as you can probably guess, that was one of our technical snafus. David forgot to mute. Anyway, I am working my way around the new Zoom webinar side of things. So lots of people in the chat. We'll be talking to you guys in a minute. I'm working on getting Chase in here really quick. So just bear with me for a few minutes. Okay, what's going on here? Can everybody hear me okay? There we go. My face was a little slow to show up. How y'all doing today? Welcome to Chase Hughes and David Snyder's Hypnotic Influence Mastery AMA. I am your erstwhile host for today, David Snyder. I want to welcome everybody. We had almost, I think we might have broke the limit and broke the machine. So it is my great honor today to welcome one of the truly powerful and most influential people in the field of influence today. He's certainly become a friend and a resource for me. And I do these things just so I have the opportunity to pick his brain. He's working on getting registered in. So real quick, we do have some administrative stuff that we're going to go through. But first and foremost, just as a quick aside, I can kind of get to know you guys a little bit better. Type in the chat, if you would. If this is your first time in Planet David, and where your name and where you're checking in from. And then for those of you who've been bebopping around Planet David for a little while, go ahead and type your name and just type veteran in the chat. Excellent, excellent. Cool. A lot of cool people. So first and foremost, let me just get a cut while you're doing that. And I asked that for several reasons. In Planet David, one of the things that we tend to embrace here is what we call a no BS, get the results no matter what approach. So our job tonight with Chase and I is to answer as many of your questions as humanly possible and to set you in a direction for you to come away with something tonight that you can absolutely start putting into practice right away, and as well as giving you a clear path to take your skills to the next level. So first and foremost, let me bring in my normal disclaimer. First of all, if politically incorrect language, colorful metaphors, swearing, or the word boobies offend you, this is probably not the best use of the next few hours. Our webinars tend to run, our online events tend to run a little long because we're very focused on delivering powerful, actionable content. And so we do have what I call a free form format. And what that means is for the first 60 minutes or so, we're going to give you foundations. We're going to answer questions. We're going to Q&A back and forth. And then at about the 60-minute mark, we have a package we put together, a pathway for you to take your skills to the next level. So if this is the scope of everything there is to learn in the field of human influence and persuasion, even in the extended time that we have time for about this much. So my commitment to you, Chase's commitment to you, is we will take you as far as we can in the time that we have, and we will point you in the direction of where to go to take your skills to the next level. Is that a fair trade? If you think that's a fair trade, go ahead and type that in the chat for me. Cool. Perfect. Perfect. Excellent. So let me just check and make sure, because I know Chase, Chase had to come in through an alternate route. So I just want to make sure he's with us before I move any further. Participants. Attendees. Things are moving kind of slow here. Okay. Okay, Chase says he's in. Can someone promote Chase to a panelist and then to a co-host? For some reason, I can't see all my participants. My books are so big. Yes, they are. This is actually, by the way, for those of you who are first timers, what you're seeing behind me is my actual bookshelf. It's a picture of my bookshelf downstairs. So a couple of things. First of all, Chase has just joined us. I'll be turning the show over to him in just a few moments. But first and foremost, if politically incorrect language, colorful metaphors, swearing, or the word boobies offends you, this is not the best use of your hours. A lot of times people will tease you about buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. That's not what this is about. Tonight, we're going to share with you as much information as humanly possible. We will give you powerful, actionable things that you can put into practice right away. Have as much fun as humanly possible. At about the 60-minute mark, with your permission, Chase and I have put our heads together to put together a next level for you, a package that we think will help to take your skills to the next level. And once again, just because Chase wasn't here when I asked this, if it's okay for us to share that with you, go ahead and type that in the chat. Cool. Very good. All right. Now, for those of you joining us, we've got a number of people, a lot of people coming in from our YouTube channel. First and foremost, we do have people in the YouTube channel monitoring that as well. If you have a question, okay, if you ask it and if you ask a question and we answer it in real time, there is a lag between YouTube and Zoom. So there's a couple ways you can get your questions answered. First and foremost, if it's a question that's relevant to the point of the conversation that Chase and I are having, we'll just answer it right there. If my veterans, or those of you who are coming from Chase's part of the world, if you see a question in the chat that you have direct experience solving, go ahead and feel free to answer it. If that's still not good enough, if you still want more information or more of an answer to your question, here's what you do next. This is being live streamed directly to our YouTube channel, and it will be immediately available after we log off tonight. If you want a direct answer for your question from Chase or I go back and I monitor every single comment on every single video, every new video that we do for about 5 to 7 days. So if there's a specific question or an extension to a question that you would like deeper information on, if you type it in the comment section below that chat, I will go back and I will personally answer it, or I'll forward it to Chase and he can answer it and give me the answer or what have you. Does that sound cool? Is that a good way to get your stuff going? All right, very cool. So are you in the right place? If you've ever had a challenge influencing another human being, if you'd like to understand how to get inside someone's head and predict what they're going to do or what buttons to press to psychologically motivate them, you're in the right place. Okay. How many of you, by definition, have no clue who the hell I am? Just type that in the chat. It's okay. Right. A lot of you say, who the hell is David Snyder and why should I care? First of all, I am a doctor of acupuncture and oriental medicine. I graduated in 2005 with my master's degree. I got my doctorate later on from Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. I've run a clinic in Solana Beach where for the past 15 years, I specialized in treating physiological illness that's as a result of repressed emotion. I've authored over 15 different products on various forms of human influence, everything ranging from covert influence techniques to hypnotherapy, vibrational influence, things of that nature. In 2020, I was named the number one NLP expert of the year by globalgurus.org, and our premier flagship influence course, Killer Influence, was actually named the #1 NLP training course in the world, also by Global Gurus. But tonight's not about me. Tonight is about you and about my very special friend and guest. This man probably needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. He's he's a career military specialist. He's spearheaded with a $30 million budget. He spearheaded massive amounts of research in the forms of interrogation, mind control, and human influence. And whereas I was dumpster diving, he was out actually talking to the real experts in the field, getting all the science and things of that nature. He's authored one of the best-selling books on human influence par excellence. It's called the Ellipsis Manual. If you haven't gotten it, why not? It is a required reference in all of my covert influence trainings. He's the author of 2 fiction books based on his real world experiences in the military and as a covert operative, and teaching covert operatives the art and science of hypnotic influence and other forms of influence. He's an expert on brainwashing and mind control, ethically, of course, because we would never do anything unethical here, right? And he I can't get certain things I can't talk about. You've seen him on Dr. Phil. He's part of an amazing group of human beings known as the Behavior Panel. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my friend, my guest, and my mentor for tonight, Mr. Chase Hughes. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, David. Can everybody hear me? Can you guys hear me okay?
If you can, yeah, raise your hand if you can hear. Okay, good.
Good. All right. Let's see. We got about 639 yeses. All right. So, David, I'm humbled by all of this. The first time I met David in person, he was a seminar at my course, which was the most terrifying thing. I've been studying from David for probably a decade, and I've just made him a mentor without him even knowing that he was one of my mentors. So definitely grateful to have this opportunity just to hang with you. And we have no format. We can talk about whatever the hell we want to talk about on here. And we can geek out on some of the black ops stuff. We can geek out on some of the extreme mind control stuff. And I think this is going to be an unprecedented video on YouTube, where it's 2 actual experts, not 2 LinkedIn experts.
Not someone who plays one on TV, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
Right on. All right. So you know what? Let me start off. Let me just say, Chase, like I said, I first heard about the first thing you ever created that I became aware of was called the behavioral table of the elements. And when I first thought, I gotta be honest, when I first saw this thing, I was like, what the fuck is this? Right. And then I started really getting into it. And I kept hearing Chase Hughes, Chase Hughes, Chase Hughes. I'm like, my Snyder sense started tingling. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And what you've done with the behavioral table is absolutely brilliant. At first glance, it looks very intimidating, right? But if you understand how the chart is actually organized, it's very, very user friendly. In fact, that particular chart is actually on the wall at the CIA headquarters, or is FBI headquarters, or both?
FBI Academy. Yeah.
FBI Academy. So that's really an origin story. And of course, people kept telling me about the Ellipsis Manual, which I think is an amazingly powerful go-to reference. But I'm curious, it's always an interesting story to hear how you developed the behavioral table of the elements, and how does that help us become better at not just analyzing human behavior, but influencing.
So I think there's a direct link between analysis and influence. That the better your analysis is, the better you can influence, because most of us are succeeding on accident because we're not really understanding how to communicate with our body, or how to understand. I'm missing 15 objections that they don't verbally say, but their body is objecting to the sale. Their body is objecting to the therapy or whatever. So I came up with the behavior table of elements. My mom and I are watching an episode of The Bachelor, and this is like 2009, somewhere around there. And she said, "Oh, this girl is really nice. This other one's really sweet. This other one's a total bitch." So she's explaining the show, and I said, "No, the one that you said was really nice just lied twice while they were in this hot tub scene." And she said, "Oh, I just wish I could have your eyes for one episode of The Bachelor." So when I was a kid, I had like rubbery kind of yoga mat kind of placemats that had, some of them had the presidents, so I could learn the presidents, the planets, the states of the US, all that. So I thought, how can I fit all of human behavior on a single placemat? And I went to bed that night just racking my brain with how can I do it? But if it's on the behavioral table, it has a minimum of 4 peer-reviewed articles to support the evidence, the findings. So that's why every year this new studies come out and the table gets updated. But it started because of The Bachelor, and now it's used in interrogations all over the world. And it's free. I made it for free for everybody. So I think it's a really cool tool.
That's awesome. I guess I'm a huge fan, obviously. I had no idea you were a fan till I showed up, and but it's interesting is that you said something. You and I both recently did an event together. We did HypnoThoughts Live, which is the world's largest hypnosis convention, and you had a packed house. I know, because I had to fight and struggle and sneak in to get in and catch a seat.
And so did you.
Yeah, but you said something interesting during one of the intermissions in that. It was interesting, and you prefaced it with, "Please don't be offended by this." But he said, you and I come from completely opposite ends of the spectrum and arrive at the same conclusions. And that's kind of where I'd like to start us off is, where did Chase Hughes come from? What, and I know you're going to ask me this question, so I'm just hitting you with it ahead of time. What got you into this whole study of influence and behavior and analysis? And where did that start? What's behind that?
Yeah, I'm going to throw this back at you because I'm genuinely curious, but I also want to throw on, and I'll answer it too. Before you got into this, what did you think mind control was? And like, what was the imaginary bubble of like, I'm doing this 20 years in the future or 5 years in the future? What does this scenario look like?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I got into this, it was 2001. It was October of 2001. My best friend on planet Earth, his name's Craig Weberly. And this kid, him and I went to this A school training together outside of boot camp, and then he's killed on the USS Cole. It was a terrorist bombing of a Navy ship. And I get these intelligence reports, and if you have a secret clearance, there's some daily briefings that come out called the Early Bird. And they have these intelligence reports that saying, our intelligence training is failing. Our capabilities are diminishing. These people are not able to persuade locals to provide the information because the data was there. We just couldn't predict it because our operatives in the area sucked, basically. So at this point, I'm thinking like, this is the government. They should be pretty good. So then I find myself in these intelligence schools, these high up recruiting schools and all of this for intelligence. And it's honest to goodness, at this time was no better than like, hey, shake people's hand, look them in the eye, use their name, touch them on the shoulder every once in a while, just like this boilerplate bull crap. And I said, like, this is what was supposed, these skills that are in a book from 1960 are what's supposed to save my friend's life. So I was obviously pretty upset. And at the time, 19, 20 years old, I was in the Navy. I was working nights at Abercrombie and Fitch just so I could meet women. And I have social anxiety like crazy. I can't talk to anybody. And I'm thinking like, this is the solution. I'm obsessed with behavioral psychology. And I got into this, and my entire goal was to revamp how intelligence training is done. And my entire goal was getting people to a place where they would do things they would not normally do and are sometimes not in their best interest, which is the opposite of most people's reasoning for learning this. But providing intelligence or committing treason against your own country to spy for the United States, those are probably not in a person's best interest, but they are in someone's best interest. And getting out, I never knew this had any therapeutic application until pretty recently. But when I first learned this, I thought mind control was going to be like, I'm going to walk up to a person and there's going to be this secret technique, like a tap on the shoulder and then jiggle one of their hands. And then I say the sentence and then they turn into that robot when they're in programming mode, like their head goes down and then they're like ready to receive command. And then you can just like put whatever. Like that was my cartoon example of what I thought mind control was like.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I hate to go ahead. I don't want to step on you. I want to give you every opportunity to speak.
No, what about you? That's what I was saying.
Well, I was fortunate in the sense that I didn't lose anybody from a terrorist bombing or anything like that. But growing up, I had a lot of problems growing up, both behaviorally, social situations. I was very socially awkward. And a lot of times I discovered, in retrospect, looking back on a lot of the things that I've discovered about me, and I was really dissociated for whatever reason, really dissociated from a lot of what was going on around me growing up. And because, I was the classic, bullied kid. I was bigger around than I was tall. I was the last to be picked for pretty much anything. In fact, one of the things I had to do was I was so bullied that I actually petitioned to graduate from high school early, just so I didn't have to ride the bus home. That's how bad it was for me. But because I was really desperate in a lot of ways to be accepted, and to have friends, to be popular. We all have these aspirations to be popular. Yeah. But one of the things is my desperation for that caused me to try and court the wrong people who consistently misused my trust, lied to me many, many times. And so I often found myself at the end of a cruel social joke or prank or whatever. And of course, as a young person with budding hormones, I wanted to get better at more intimate applications, seduction, attraction. Those were things that I wanted. And about 15 years old, I came across this thing called hypnosis. I was like, well, what's this? It's you reprogram subconscious mind and get people to change their behaviors and their minds and beliefs. Like, oh, really? What else can you do with it? So the first thing I started thinking was, well, can we make people do what we want? Can we get people to, like me, for example, and a lot like you, I was like, I had this little image in my head of these are not the droids you're looking for, kind of a thing. And of course, one of the things that kept popping up for me was that in all the hypnosis books, the classic hypnosis books, especially, and for some reason, I just knew this was bullshit almost from the beginning. So they kept saying, you can't get people to do things they don't want to do in hypnosis. And I'm like, I couldn't get past that.
Yeah.
It's like, something's not matching up here. I couldn't figure it out directly. It took me years, really, of studying trainer after trainer, book after book. I became fascinated with brainwashing, mind control very early on in my life. And I knew that, my Snyder sense, as my wife likes to call it, started tingling. I said, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I remember sitting in my room after being rejected yet again, and, and just kind of staring up at the world, or God, I guess, if you want to call it that. It's like, I will never, I wanted to be irresistible. I never wanted to be powerless again. I never wanted to be in a situation where there wasn't something I could do. And one of the things I began to discover was that there's two things that we need to do to be able to write our own ticket in this world, besides the will to actually take an action. And that is, you got to be able to look at somebody and know what's going on inside their head. And then you've got to have the tools and the techniques to press those buttons to get them to do what you want them to do. It's the ultimate survival skill in a social community. I think Mystery, one of the more famous pickup artists, used to say, and he did this in the context of seduction, but I'll paraphrase a little bit. He basically said, if you can't meet someone and have sex with them, you are by definition sterile and doomed to extinction. And you say something very, very similar in many of your courses, where everyone in here, nobody's ancestors here died a virgin, right? You were, you learned enough to reproduce and move your genes forward. Well, the truth is, in an environment that we're in as social beings, the ultimate survival skill is to be able to reach inside somebody's head and find their reason for doing what you want them to do. The most powerful reasons that they can for doing that will always be their own. And so that was kind of the epiphany that I came to after many years of searching, but it was really about changing me to become someone who understood what was going on around him and was able to navigate those situations and get my outcome. But it started from a very powerless place. For me, I guess that I was always picked on. I was never really accepted anywhere. And I had this amazing gift to always say the wrong thing at the right time.
Right.
So I always found myself wondering what the heck's going to happen to me next.
Yeah.
But that's what kind of motivated me.
Well, I think it's pretty similar. I felt in many ways the same way, that people would say you can't be made to do something you wouldn't normally do under hypnosis. And I'm like, that's kind of the purpose of hypnosis. And I've seen a stage show before, and I know they're not faking it. I thought my whole life, actually, I thought my whole life that they were faking it on these stage shows until I went to one in person. Mm-hmm. I saw it. And then I strapped one of the participants to an EEG during this. So you can see, if you're really nerding out on this stuff, that you will see this drop in the dorsal anterior cingulate gyrus. You'll see this drop in the dorsomedial prefrontal cortex, and this kind of executive control network goes away. And when you're faking hypnosis, those things kind of get heightened because you're hyper aware of what could hurt you in the environment, or someone catching you that you're faking it.
That's cool. And I love it when you talk, I get all turned on when you talk science. Talk some more.
Yeah. So let's look at like hypnosis, and you can replace the word hypnosis with extremely good persuasion in anything that I'm saying tonight. I don't know if David will give you the same disclaimer. But if you look at it as suggestibility going up, dissociation going up, and focus becoming narrow as those things go up. So it's like we have a camera lens that's kind of blurry, and then we're focused down on one little tiny thing, is like a zoom lens. Mm-hmm. Those are the things. So like the psychosocial factors would be like suggestibility, and the physiological factors might be this dissociative capacity that a person has, or that we build into the situation. We can manufacture suggestibility, and we can manufacture dissociation, and we can engineer focus in most conversations.
That's fantastic. In fact, and I agree 100%. In fact, one of the things that we talk about in the systems that we teach is this concept of, you can think of it as persuasion, you can think of it as trance. Human beings are like the proverbial trance fish that doesn't know they're wet. They're never out of trance. From that perspective, they're always cycling between some level of absorption and focus. And as you transition from those states of absorption and focus, you'll naturally access certain abilities and skill sets while cutting yourself off from others. And so we tell our students, and we tell pretty much anybody who will listen, that trance has two components, and you nailed it: absorption a continually narrowing focus of attention and absorption in the process or experience. And when you can engineer that within a bubble of trust and connection and openness, which we'll talk about, we both work out our own ways of engineering those things and are very complementary. You can pretty much give any suggestion you want. And as long as you set the context properly, people will tend to buy in.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. And I think that we should bring that up and maybe talk about engineering trust and the feeling of safety. Bring that in sometime here soon within this dialogue, because I really want you and I to, not to debate on this, but I want to look at it. I want you to shine your flashlight on it from your direction, and I'll shine mine from that direction. So
Absolutely.
I just wrote it down. I wrote it down here for us to bring up.
Cool. All right. Well, you want to take some questions and then circle back, or do you want? Which direction do you want to go, my friend?
Yeah, let's take a few questions.
All right. Let's see here. So I have a question here from Dan Allen, who's asking, where did the name for the Ellipsis Manual come from? Is there a story there?
It's going to be boring. But I will say that Ellipsis, I just thought was a badass sounding name. So let's start with that. But the little 3 dots, when you read language, you see those little 3 dots, or you see those 3 dots in an app on your phone. That means more, but it's the extra part is hidden or removed or concealed from view. So when we see it in language, that's called an ellipsis, those 3 dots. That means omitted, removed, or concealed language. So I thought that was cool that we're not only communicating with concealed language, but we're seeing some stuff that's concealed kind of behind the scenes. So that's where the name of the book initially came from.
Awesome. And you're very right. It's interesting along the lines of weird origin stories. You know, people ask, a lot of people don't really know how the neurolinguistic programming got its name. And was actually, the way Richard tells it, he was going through a checkpoint. I think it was to school or to some base or something. And I think it was a school. Yeah. And they were asking him, what are you teaching? And he looked down at the floor of his car and he saw 3 textbooks, one on neurology, one on linguistics, and one on computer programming. And he looked at the guy and he said, neurolinguistic programming. And the rest is history. So a little peek behind the curtain there.
I love that.
You know, and it's interesting, you know, one of the things about names, and for those of you who are doing any kind of marketing or any kind of written persuasion, remember that human beings can be extremely, extremely intelligent, but as an aggregate, their IQ tends to drop the more people in it. So when you create titles for products or programs or things like that, avoid sexy titles are cool, but you always got to explain what the hell that means. Because if the title doesn't really explain the problem it's solving, you tend to lose people. So one of the things that happens a lot of times is people can't connect your message to what you're sending, or what they need to what you're sending. They move on to something else. And that circles us back to this whole idea of trust. Human beings are moving through the world with a map of the way the world is supposed to be. And almost like, and again, I can speak to Chase this because he understands this because he was in the Navy, sonar and radar. We're moving through the world and we're pinging the world around us with our own internal map. And we're searching for matches. We're searching for people who match our internal map. And what happens when we find those matches is we orient on them. We also orient on things that are very, very different. Novelty, and Chase will talk about the power of novelty. But that orientation process also happens when we find someone who actually matches this internal checklist that we have. And then they start orienting on you and paying more attention to you to see how many more boxes they can check when they deal with you. The more boxes that they can check, the more rapidly the barriers to intimacy drop. You become safe, then you become somebody that they want to connect with, and your status in their world goes up exponentially as you check off those boxes. And the reason, and that principle of this idea of sameness, this idea of projection or mimicry, for lack of a better word, we call that the identification principle. people, and again, I know it's not politically correct to say this in some circles, but people like people who are like themselves. The more powerfully you can match a person's internal checklist of, and this is important, of the way the world is supposed to be, the more suggestible and open to your influence they become. So on that note, Chase, your thoughts?
So I'm going to approach trust from a whole different angle, which I knew this would happen. And that's why I think this is so fun. I would do this with you if nobody was here. I would still, let's just do one privately and then talk about the secret stuff.
Right.
I'm kidding. But when it comes to trust or any human emotion that we want somebody else to feel, I tend to default to the further back I can take this into our ancestry, that should be the first priority for me. So what I mean by this is that if this is all of human history, the tip of this pin is how long we've been using actual language with other humans. We're born with movement and nonverbal communication. We are not born with language capacity. We're born knowing how to smile and frown and all that stuff. And so I would say movement is your number one indicator of trustworthiness in social settings. And I'll unpack this a little bit, that when an animal is feeling insecure or fearful, this speeds up body language. So this speeds up the movement of a chihuahua, a chimpanzee, or a gorilla. So fear makes mammals move quicker. So if I'm a salesperson or if I'm a therapist and I'm trying to gain trust with someone and I'm a little bit jittery or my muscles are moving a little bit faster than they should, and I'm taking notes that are quick and rapid movement, I'm automatically telling that person's subconscious. Remember, the part of our brain that reads other mammals' behavior is below conscious, also below language. It cannot speak English, so it's not certain what it's seeing in language terms. So we're generating either trust or maybe nervousness by the speed of our body. And one thing that I would start doing to build trust right away is start moving no faster than I would move if I was standing in a swimming pool. I'm here at the Marriott Hotel in Wichita, Kansas, of all places. There's a pool here, and I always think about that every time I walk past a pool, that should be your body's speed limit. If you're on stage speaking, if you are especially one-on-one with another person or providing some kind of therapeutic help healing to another person. So we always want to start every persuasion going back to, would it work 4 million years ago? Question one for all persuasion is, my technique, the first technique I'm going to use, needs to have the ability to have worked 1 million years ago or 500,000 years ago, when we weren't really speaking very well with each other. So if you get put back in time, that's technique number one. So technique number two, we're starting to move closer to modern day. So then we kind of move into Maslow's hierarchy. So if I'm talking to a customer or a person who is down here on the hierarchy, and like they're needing social belonging and love from other people, they have none of that. But the product I'm selling in my sales pitch is selling actualization. That's a problem. That's saying that I automatically from the very beginning do not understand where you are as a human being. And I'm giving you something that is 4 rungs or 3 rungs above the ladder from where you see yourself. So I always want to look at, and it sounds like such a simplistic thing, just to think about the Maslow's hierarchy and think about that as you're looking at a human being, as you're thinking about the customers who are going to be reading your sales copy or being exposed to something that you're going to put online. Where are they on this Maslow's hierarchy? If they're suffering with social belonging needs and you're training people in behavior, or you're training people in something that's going to get them love and belonging, like a brand new BMW, which is why a lot of people buy those, that's where we sell to. We're not going to sell to the actualization part. We're going to sell to the part that A, most of our customers are looking for that item to fix, and B, most likely where they are right now or where they want to be in that moment. So I think that's another big part of trust. Okay. And as an unfolding element of that, the more we are removing barriers, which would be like this button right here on my shirt is removed since the start of our meeting.
Mhm.
And my hands are remaining kind of open as we're talking to each other. This is another nonverbal thing that'll work a million years ago that shows this trust, that shows an openness to other people. Mark Bowden has one of the best videos on this I've ever seen in my life. It's his TED Talk, actually, where he talks about how opening your hands automatically makes trust happen in somebody else's brain. So that would be my little primer for building trust.
And I think if I remember correctly, Mark called this open hand position right in this area the trust zone, right?
The truth plane.
Truth plane. That's right. That's right. And what's interesting, going back to this idea of what worked 1,000 years ago and and using the body and movement, it's interesting that the highest level, the most popular rated TED Talk speakers have an abnormally high number of hand gestures that they use during a presentation. Vanessa Van Edwards did some really cool research where she literally counted the gestures in the top 10 or top 100 TED Talk people, and they all came in like 267 gestures in the course of however long the talk was. Yeah. Now I have a question going back to this idea of slow movement. So, and engendering trust. If we're moving slow, is that more leading with the whole idea, again, going back to Maslow's pyramid, going back to this concept of being perceived as safe, or does it go more, because we know that higher status people tend to move slower as well. Is it a combination? Does it lie more on the safety side versus the status side? How would you pigeonhole that?
Yeah, so let me start by saying, when people hear the word, you need to be more confident, or they're telling themselves, I need to be more confident. Most of us, and maybe you'll admit to this, maybe not, but a lot of people tend to think of dominance and confidence as the same thing. It is absolutely not the same thing whatsoever. So I want you to just start thinking of confidence from today forward, because we know we could do it. David and I could probably do a 2-hour talk on how overconfidence or just high confidence absolutely gives you an unfair advantage that's just as good as having a ton of this training. Mm-hmm. I could teach you in 3 minutes how to do hypnosis, and if you're extremely confident, you'll be better than most hypnotists, even the one on YouTube. Confidence is so critical. So instead of dominance or being rude or being obsessed with hierarchy, because the moment someone starts thinking, I need to be more confident, their brain defaults to thinking about social hierarchy. That's the biggest mistake. I need to be dominant, or I need to raise my status in a hierarchy. Confidence is not status. Confidence is a feeling of, I'm at home. I feel like I'm at home. I have permission to do whatever I feel like I want to do, and I'm safe. That's kind of it. Everything kind of boils down to safety. So when I see people one-on-one, I work with Hollywood celebrities. I work with the lead fighters of all time, the best boxers of all time. All the problems I hear throughout my life working with these people is like, I want to be more confident. I want to be able to do this with more fluidity. I want to be a better public speaker. I want to have more discipline and stop worrying about things. If we put those in a boiling pot, that would all boil down to a feeling of safety. And that is such a critical thing, that confidence is comfort and safety, and knowing that things are probably going to be okay. I'm not going to die. If I go and stand up and say what I want to say and take charge or act like I'm actually in charge here, no one's going to stab me. There's not a worst case scenario that's going to end in me dying, most likely, in this situation. So it's that feeling of safety that's super important. And I've absolutely lost track of whatever the hell the question was. I was excited about that.
Actually, the answer was solid gold. And you actually did answer the question, in that it's more about projecting a sense of being safe and comfortable. And to that effect, one of the things we mentioned in the email that we sent out, when we talked about this, we talked about what I called psycholinguistics, or how to use language and things like that. Do you think it's better to use, because there's a lot of myth, and you just clarified it very, very well. There's a lot of mythology around this word confidence. In fact, I tell people that confidence, as it's taught by the self-help community, is largely bullshit. So we redefine confidence. But do you think it might be more useful for people who are students of influence who maybe have a misconception of or kind of have years of programming around the word confidence to redefine it as something like certainty or sincerity or something of that. Comfort has to be there. That's the one thing that I think a lot of people, when they look at this idea of confidence, they tend to think of it as a shot of adrenaline and Benzedrine given rectally. I think it's like drinking 12 rock stars and being crazy Eddie, his prices are, and it's not really what true confidence or certainty is really about. The one thing that you see with people who are confident or who match our definition of confidence is they're comfortable, and that we keep coming back to that word, comfort. Comfort has to be generated both internally and then ultimately externally. And by moving slow and keeping your body moving at a specific pace that's easy for the reptile brain to kind of pay attention to, you generate both. And so what do you think? Do you think it's important that maybe we might be better served by redefining confidence or just changing the word?
I think changing the word is great because we've got so much tied to that stuff. We've got all the societal beliefs about that. But the word safety, we can say safety. I'm comfortable. I'm at home here. I'm allowed to do whatever I want to do here. And nothing's going to stop me from doing whatever I want to do. And just being completely okay, knowing that everything's probably going to be just fine and having just a generalized positive outcome. When we're not confident, our brain is saying, I need to make myself tense so other people can relax. I need to make myself less confident so other people don't feel bad. And that's the biggest thing that I see in a lot of people. If I just shrink a little bit and be a little more, a little less confident, then other people can relax. But I'll just tense up into this little ball so that they can have a nice day, so that they can have a nice experience. So that confidence has nothing to do with status, hierarchy, dominance, or energy, like how much energy is in your body. You can be 100% confident in the middle of having the flu.
Yep.
You can still have confidence. That has nothing to do with hierarchy. It's a feeling of safety, and I'm allowed to do exactly what I want to do. I'm very confident and safe in this environment. If I take this action, I know I'm going to be safe in the future. So there's a lot about safety. And David, you and I are going to talk about some chemical ways to engineer confidence at the seminar. I know we don't have a whole lot of time to unpack the neurology of leveraging chemicals, actual stuff you put in your mouth, chemicals, to feel confidence. But there's a whole lot of ways we can do that. But if you want just a quick primer on how to start increasing your confidence today, find wherever your circle is, wherever your little comfort zone circle is, and just take one step out. So if your circle is like, I'm not very confident talking to strangers, go do that. Go do that. Go stand at line at Starbucks and compliment someone on their shirt. That's it. And just start there, because your brain works on evidence. So David, I don't want to like derail this, but our brain's working on past evidence. So I can only be confident in the situation if either A, I'm in charge, B, someone told me I'm in charge, or C, I have a role, an ROLE, role in this situation. So our brain's looking for evidence that we are allowed to act that way. You need to shut that off in your brain right away. You don't need permission. You don't need evidence. You don't need a role. If you act this way, this is how programmed human beings are. If you act like you've got a million pieces of evidence, other people are so hardwired to believe in evidence. Like he would never act that way unless everyone treated him with a tremendous amount of respect. We're so hardwired to look for evidence and permission to do things that if you start doing it with permission, they will assume that everyone responds to you like that. So the evidence does not need to be there. No one is going to come tap you on the shoulder and give you a little pink slip and say, okay, here's your permission slip to feel confident. And just imagine a scenario where you walk into a Versace store. I just went into a Versace store in Los Angeles last week. A cheap belt, like a piece of crap belt in this store was like $14,000. And I'm thinking, like, even if I'm a billionaire, I'm not going to buy this crap. But somebody came in there and they were really nervous. They were looking around And you can tell the people who know, like, someone's going to know that I'm in here and I'm not supposed to be in here because I can't afford anything. But imagine that was you. You're standing around, you know, you're not going to buy anything. People look at you suspiciously, but in all reality, you're probably imagining that they have a suspicious look on their face. They probably don't care. But if your boss gave you the company platinum card and said, hey, go down to the Versace store right now and get a giant leather briefcase. We've got a client coming in from out of town. I want to give them a gift. You're going to walk into that store with a completely different posture, a different attitude. Everything's going to be different because you had a role. You had a reason to be there and you had evidence behind it, but no one else gave a crap about that evidence except for you. Mm-hmm. So get rid of that today. You need nothing to feel confidence. You don't need the company platinum card and you don't need a pink permission slip. I'll just leave it at that.
Fantastic information. And I think the biggest piece, and we see this a lot in identity by design and some of the regression trainings that we do, as well as in the influence track, is this concept of an identity that we carry around. And that identity or that persona that we carry around has, I'm allowed to do this, I'm not allowed to do that. And those permissions, as you mentioned, are basically arbitrary. They come in through the outside world, from our parents, from our culture, from our school teachers, from the authority figures in our life. And so one of the big things that we work on in training is we work on deconstructing that. We call it identity by design for a reason. And part of that is learning how to find those pieces of the identity that don't serve us, that keep us from giving ourselves permission to take the actions that we need. In Killer Influence, for example, one of the first things we teach you is this concept of state control, which is really about frame control. It's about stepping into a persona or an identity state, an ego state that has permission and a role to fulfill. So we have master and commander, we have the open heart trust trigger, we have the rockstar metaframe. And each of these is a combination of physiology and a way of moving, but also a way of feeling and perceiving the world that gives you permission to be something other than what you're used to. And so we take a lot of the, like I always tell my students, and I don't know if this is something that might be useful for your people as well, take an acting class, specifically method acting. Because one of the things that good actors do better than anyone is they have the ability to step in to a role. They have ability where they have permission to do or be or say certain things they wouldn't normally say. But their whole craft is geared around one thing: to reach into your reality, suck you out of it, and pull you into theirs. And so we borrow from these courses when we give you kind of the first 4 bullets in your Batman utility belt. You know, it's the master and commander technique, which is all about a sense of comfort, safety, dominance, and certainty. The second one is rockstar metaframe, which is more of a popular, hey, party boy, let's go have fun, let's go explore, more of a dopamine driven kind of an energy. And then, of course, we have the open heart trust trigger, which is all about releasing oxytocin and flooding the system as someone who you can trust, who you can believe in. And we guide you through these processes. But I think going to the deeper level, the information you were talking about, is that stepping into these states, however you get there, turns on your permissions. And I think when we can give people back that understanding that they can give themselves permission, that they don't need an external validation, then you can basically become who you want whenever you want in whatever situation and affect your outcome.
Yeah. Absolutely agree. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about that I think other people would really get some benefit from is just kind of following on from what we were talking about with confidence here, is self-worth, and just this feeling of what self-worth is, because you hear a lot of people talking about net worth. Like, what's that guy's net worth? I'm gonna, like, oh, here's this guy, he's rich. Oh, what's he worth? I want to talk about the difference between net worth and self-worth for you. Maybe not just the difference, but what self-worth has to do with confidence and this master and commander role that you're talking about.
Okay. Well, self-worth is all about, what do I deserve? What do I deserve to have? And John Assaraf in his book or the movie The Secret was talking about how you can't out earn your level of self-worth or self-esteem. I guess that's true enough to be true, but I've seen lots of people make a lot of money whose self-worth was in the toilet. So I think that's highly contextual. What is your level of self-esteem or self-worth in a given context? And one of the things I see over and over and over again is that The people who take their lives to the next level in terms of net worth ask themselves a very different question than people who don't. First of all, and you and I were discussing this earlier, is that people who tend to take their net worth in a negative direction tend to invest in things. They intend to invest in external objects or trinkets that symbolize having a certain level of income or something like that. They're trying to prove to other people in a lot of ways that they're worthy, that they've made it, so to speak. Whereas people with a higher level of self-esteem, and this is something I learned the hard way. It was one of the most painful lessons I ever learned. If people want to hear that story, I'm happy to tell it. But people who are high self-esteem people, they basically ask two questions. And I'll actually paraphrase Mark Victor Hansen. He was standing in front of a room full of people one time, and he was actually discussing the difference between, to use your terminology, low net worth people versus high net worth people. He says, low net worth people tend to ask, how much will it cost? Whereas high net worth people tend to ask, how much will it make me? How much value will it add to my life? What will this get me? Right? How will this expand my quality of life? And Richard Bandler actually said, as an analog to that, Richard Bandler used to say, when you evaluate yourself or you evaluate the relationships that you're in, the first question you need to ask is this relationship or this person adding value to my life? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean money. I mean, is it intimacy? Is it connection? Is it support? However you calibrate that value, is this person adding value to my life? And if the answer is no, why are you in it? One of our mutual colleagues, Chris Voss, used to say, no deal is better than a bad deal, right? Yeah. And so we're going back to this whole self-worth, net worth conundrum. If you keep getting what you've always gotten, it's because you're not investing in you. And so a lot of times these little self-sabotage mechanisms will come up. Words like it's too expensive, or I don't have the time, or it's too hard. These are all little programs or little tapes that your neurology is playing to keep you from changing. Because like you said, your neurology works on evidence, right? And one of the things we talk about in hypnosis, and you're probably familiar with this, is the human nervous system sorts for what's familiar. If you look back on your history and you have 100 years of not investing, of running away, of saying it's not worth it, what you're really saying is I'm not worth it, first of all. Then that's what you'll tend to default to unless you marshal up the will to take an action and do something different. And it's that discomfort that you feel when you make that decision to go forward that creates the ability for you to develop a sense of deservingness and a higher level of self-esteem. Because we've all had situations, and maybe some of you can relate to this and maybe you can't. You've all had situations in your life where you saved up for something, right? You had this big, cool thing you were going to buy. And right as you were about to buy it, the universe came in and an emergency came up, sucked that money right out the window, right? But you've also had the experience of having just enough money to get all your bills paid, maybe have a little left over for the weekend. And all of a sudden, some emergency came along, some massive bill comes up that you don't have the money to cover. And yet you found it. By hook or by crook, you found a way to pay off that expense, right? And it was the discomfort that you felt, the resources you didn't know you had, that took you from one level of being or one level of a situation to another. And in that moment, when you took that action, you became the person who deserved to have the result. And so there's always going to be some discomfort in moving and leveling up. Now, sometimes that's a physical discomfort from actually having to take an action. Sometimes it's a financial discomfort. But the bottom line is, when you see an opportunity to level up, you've come to the fork in the road. You either do what you've always done and get what you've always gotten, or you take the road less challenged and level up. So I think that's the kind of the difference between high self-esteem people and low self-esteem people. I think it's the difference between high net worth people and low net worth people. And I think it's the choice that we have to cognitively understand so that we can choose to become one as opposed to defaulting to the other. And to quote Forrest Gump, that's about all I have to say about that.
Also, to quote Forrest Gump, she tastes like cigarettes. I'm not sure what I meant by that, but I will say that I absolutely agree with you. And it's like saying, like, I want to learn martial arts. And then like you go to the studio and they say, okay, you're going to have to start stretching or, doing some exercise. And you're like, oh, nah, never mind. I'll just check on YouTube. I'm going to stick with YouTube martial arts. They don't make you stretch or anything. They don't make you do anything. So no matter what you're doing, even if you're learning how to play the saxophone, there's going to be some discomfort. There's going to be definitely a period of discomfort. And it's the willingness to endure that discomfort, I think, is the big separator between I didn't have that growing up. I did not have that discomfort tolerance. I dropped out of high school and joined the military. My friends went to Yale. So I did not have that. I was like, I'm not going to do 4 more years of enduring anything. And you could see, like, I finally found a mentor who kind of helped me push me over the edge to say, you need to just undergo this discomfort because we know that's the end of it. And this, like, when I found this is like, if I go to the top companies in the world, I look at the top therapists in the world, the best politicians, fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. It's always the ones with extremely high social skill. They can read anybody they talk to. They can make small talk. They can have great one-on-one conversations. They will always do better than the person with the perfect script, or they're like the formula that doesn't involve any social skills. You just say these magic words and then a result comes out. Those social skills will always win. Like, I can read people, I can read the situation, and I know how to communicate effectively, not just here's some words to say. Otherwise, we could really learn karate on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Or whatever martial art you want. I can learn gunfighting, but all I need to do is just subscribe to a couple of YouTube channels. Boom, I'm an expert. But that's the thing. Like, we know that social skills win every time. That's what leverages up you financially. They make more money. They're more likely to get promoted. They're more likely to get a shorter jail sentence or get out of speeding tickets, get upgraded to first class, win the job promotion, win partners when they're out in bars and clubs in the dating world. Those skills matter a lot in every aspect. They make you a better parent, a better partner in a relationship. So I mean, I think that was the biggest investment for me, and I'll speak for no one else. But for me, that seemed like every aspect of life, they all had threads that would go back. For everyone that I ever met that was successful had some of that social stuff, unless the only exception was like somebody with like an IQ over like 210, who maybe didn't have those social things, but their IQ just, blew them out of the water because it's smarter than most of the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is, and again, we have a lot of parallels in our world, but we also have a lot of differences. But the thing I see over and over and over again is it's the ability of somebody who understands the social skill, the soft side of things. And going back to this idea of trust and comfort and empathy. And empathy is really one of the single biggest factors in closing a lot of sales. And it's actually one of the single biggest indicators of, for doctors, for example. There have been studies that have been shown that the likelihood of a doctor getting sued for malpractice is inversely proportional to the amount of rapport that the patient has with them. And so the more rapport and connection you have with people, the more benefits you get. There is no scenario where the ability to understand humans, know how they think, know what's important to them, and how to link it to what you want them to do to get them to want to do what you want them to do is not useful. It does not matter. And so as long as we're human beings living in a society, especially now with all the fear mongering and the fear-based mind control and the psychopolitics that's being leveled at us, the person who understands these skill sets at a deeper level rises to the top of the pyramid. They become the apex influencer, par excellence and bar none. And so I think that's been true in my experience. And I've had a very varied career. You obviously very varied career. But the one thing we keep coming back to over and over again is it's your ability to understand people and create connection and trust in whatever venue or context you're working in that allows you to move forward in life. Yeah. And so when you decide where to place or invest your time and energy and effort, the more you invest in these social skills, these social identities and tools and techniques, the more rapidly you're going to find that return on the investment. And you're going to automatically be more comfortable because you'll understand the environment that you're in, but not only understanding the environment that you're in, you'll know what to do. Yeah. Which takes your comfort level to a whole new plane.
Yeah, and if you have a chance to join David and I at our event coming up in Orlando, I sincerely, and I will beg you and entreat you to do this, because this is something I feel like I'm helping a friend. This is a massive event that I don't think it will ever be. Maybe we'll never do this again. I don't know. But it's 5 days of us nonstop. I'm sorry, 4 days of us nonstop content and exercises and value the entire time. We're not speaking separately in different rooms. We're there together. We're going to have panels. We're going to have Q&As, a ton of exercises, and you'll get a chance to interact with this stuff and really level this stuff up. This is the deciding factor for like 99% of our success in life, not just financially, and to level up how much we can get from a person, how much we can get on a raise with our employer, but just how much we get back from other humans. And that's our biggest return on investment, is what do I get back? I can get financial, I can level up my social skills and get instant financial results, but my biggest return is from other human beings. And David, I want to get your opinion on, like, what do you think is the biggest return for this seminar? And then I want to ask you a question about the first thing you profile when you see a person after that, because I think I've been wanting to ask you this for like 2 years. So I want to get your answer to that after.
Okay. Can you restate the first part of the question? Because I was so focused on the profiling part, I kind of got a temporary psychologically induced deafness.
So, I mean, what do you think will be the biggest takeaway for the seminar coming up in Orlando?
I think the biggest takeaway, and it comes in 3 flavors, and we call it the I3 model. But what you'll come away with is a system, an integrated system. The metaphor that I use for what Chase does and what I do is kind of like, and again, this is a Marshall metaphor. So please, if that offends you, I'll find a different one later. But I want you to think about the technologies that Chase has created and the technologies that we've honed and refined over the last 20 years at NLP Power and Killer Influence are like the bullets in the gun. Or how many people, and I know Chase is a geek like me. He likes comic books and stuff like that. So, in the Avengers, they have this guy called Hawkeye, right? He can see things from a distance. He can figure out where the weak points are, and he can hit that bullseye from any angle, right? Using that bow and arrow. But the other thing about Hawkeye has going for him is that he's got in his quiver all these specialized arrowheads for every situation and every circumstance, so that no matter where he's at or what he's doing, he can observe the situation, he knows what buttons to press, and he has the exact right tool to get the job done. So when you come to the SPYCRAFT training that we're doing in Orlando in September, you're going to get the bow and all the arrowheads, that allow you to look at a situation, figure out exactly what's going on, and get right to the exact target you need to get your outcome. And so there's going to be I'm big hands-on, and the way we've structured this, in case people were wondering, we've structured this where I'm going to be in the room the entire time. Chase is going to be in the entire time. I teach half a day. Chase teaches half a day. We tag team, we alternate, we do drills, we integrate. This is going to be probably one of the most intense persuasion and influence training seminars on the planet. Why? Because Chase and I have one thing of the many things we have in common. The most important thing is we're results oriented. Money walks, bullshit are bullshit walks. Our job is in those 4 days is to indoctrinate you in a good way into the most powerful systems of human profiling and influencing methods on the planet, and for you to come away with the exact tools and a system that you can apply in any situation, any circumstance, under any conditions, and get your outcome. Right? We've been, like I said, we've been doing this work for 15, 20 years now from the killer influence side. Chase's information from the Ellipsis and Q Prime and all the amazing work that he's done have added more bullets and more understanding and depth to what's going on. There is no training. There has never been a training like this on the planet. And I don't know that we'll ever do it again. But if you're serious, and you know who you are, if you're serious about leveling up, about taking your skills to the Jedi level, right? Or as to use one of Chase's favorites, the juggernaut level, right? I encourage you to take, by the way, we're at 33 slots. We've only got 17 left. We have to max out at 50. If this is something that you feel, and again, you know, you're at that fork in the road, right? You can choose to do what you've always done, or you can level up. You can take the next step and be there September 23rd through the 26th for one of the most amazing trainings ever. I'm excited. I'm going just for purely selfish reasons to pick the brains of this guy, because that's just
same here.
You know, I want to see him in action. And like I said, I came to his training first. I'll be, so I'm going, and when people were asking me, why are you doing this with Chase Hughes? Aren't you guys competitors? No, we're complementers. There is a synergy here that probably no other system has ever seen. And, for those of you who are interested, I think Sarah was posting some links in the chain, or in the threads. Would you guys like to hear more about this training? Type yes in the chat if you'd like to hear more about it.
Also, coming up, I want to talk about money psychology and what you think about that. I want to talk about priming and what priming does, and how you use priming and persuasion. And I want to see if you and me both could dispel some myths about covert hypnosis and give a couple of techniques, and maybe talk about a little bit of like behavior profiling after this first question, like what do you look for first? And like, what are your top 2 or 3 things that were big, holy crap moments for you when you were learning behavior profiling, and how we can give this to you right away to take home today. So a lot of these skills, I want to just give you a ton of value to take home today. Something that I want this to be a masterclass for everybody as well. But David, let me redirect this question again at you.
Sure.
When you see another person and you are looking at them, if you had to just pick one thing to look for, or one thought process that you have as you're analyzing or looking at a human being, what would that be for you?
I think for me, when I approach somebody, the first thing that I want to pay attention to is their orientation. And so what I mean by that is, as I approach, where does their ventral orientation go? And then depending on the range I'm at, I will start to orient on posture, ventral orientation, and actually on the eyes, for several reasons. I'm looking around the eyebrow area, because that's going to be one of the first things that's going to signal if this person's comfortable with me or not. That unconscious hello, that unconscious eyebrow flash is going to give me an indicator of how much work do I actually need to do. Then I'm going to zero in on pupil dilation as a baseline to see where they're at in terms of that, so I can monitor how towards or away from they are. And finally, like you talked about, I'm going to look at blink rate. I'm going to look at how rapidly are they blinking. Are they blinking fast? Are they blinking slow? As I start to unpack or move into dialogue, for lack of a better word. Am I moving towards that level of connection, trust, and sincerity that I need to get my outcome, or am I moving away from it? So those are kind of the first things I orient on as I'm approaching.
Oh, that's great. All right, so let me give you mine.
Okay.
I'm so thrilled that they're wildly different.
Okay.
So the first thing I look for, I ask myself the question. My number one question, we know if any of you follow Tony Robbins, one of his favorite quotes of mine is that questions drive focus. So I want to force myself to start asking this one exact question. If you just start doing this week, it's going to change your life. Grab your pen. If you've got one, I'm going to give you a couple of things you can draw on a piece of paper or write down right now. Absolutely change the way that you view people forever. So here it is. This question is, I first contact with another person. My number one question, what do they want me to think about them? How do they want other people to view them? How are they trying to get me to view them? So if I'm at a stoplight and I'm behind a Subaru that's covered in bumper stickers, what do they want me to think? Like what are those bumper stickers trying to say to me? I'm adventurous. I travel a lot. I'm very athletic. I'm in a lot of social groups. I would be a very good friend to you. I'm not threatening. So they're saying so many messages, and even just a human being. Do they want to be seen as I'm non-threatening? I am friendly. I'm highly intelligent. I'm perfect. I'm very strong. Do not screw with me or I'm going to knock your teeth out. That's coming out. Like, what do they want me to think? And typically that's how I would be treating them at the beginning of the conversation. In that way, they want to be seen. And at least that's how it's going to start.
Mhm.
And I think the second part of this, if you take your pen and draw an up, down, left, right matrix on your notes. I don't know if I'm on the screen or not. I still see the green triangle around David.
Oh, you're on the screen.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So if you draw up, down, left, right. So up, down, you could say this is confident up top. Right down here would be insecure. So if insecurity is the opposite of confidence, confidence must be security. Security means safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have safety, not safe. And then confidence, insecurity, and over here is closed and open. So those, I'm looking at where they are on this matrix. Are they in this little quadrant or this quadrant? So their body mostly closed up, like their lips, their arms, their hands. Our body is either closing or opening all the time. Like my eyebrows going up just when I said that is an opening gesture. So are they mostly closed, mostly open, mostly confident, or mostly insecure? And that's a game-changing way to start viewing people. And it's something we can't do on the phone. We can't do the open closed on the phone, but we can have the confident and secure matrix. And how do they want to be seen on the phone? If I'm doing sales or persuasion over Zoom or over the phone, something you can absolutely do today right away.
Excellent. And it's excellent that you mentioned that the insecure versus comfort, because there was a course I was reviewing based on a book called Left of Bang, which was based on the Marines Combat Hunter program, where they're actually out looking for terrorists. And it's very in line with what they're showing as well. So there's this commonality, there's this universality to the true principles of human influence and profiling that once we understand them, it gives us an unprecedented edge in getting inside people's heads and figuring out I find it interesting though that your profiling begins with a question, right? Because I kind of interpreted your question one way, and yours was maybe I didn't quite understand correctly where you wanted me to go. But I like the fact that you started with, who does this person want me to perceive them as, or who do they want me to be? And that goes to one of the first things that we're going to teach in Orlando from the Killer Influence System is called the I3 model, which starts with identity, right? Who are you? What are you, what are you projecting? How are people interpreting what you're sending out to the universe? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? It starts with a whole inventory of what you are from a persuasion perspective. Then it goes into I2, which is intelligence. How much information can we gather about the subject? Because the more information we can gather about the subject, the more targeted and the less we have to use a lot of influence techniques. The ones we have far more leverage. And then finally, I3 is that whole idea of influence technologies or influence techniques. So I think what's really cool is this idea of who does this, and again, I'm going to rephrase what you said in my way, and if it comes across differently, I apologize. The question I often ask is, who do I need to be in order for this person to be who I need them to be to do what I want them to do? So you kind of invert that formula by saying, who does this person, and it goes to the whole concept of social mask, public personas versus private personas. Who does this person want to be perceived as?
Yeah. Right. And I think you hit something on the head there that I struggled with for like a decade. That I always thought that the question is, what do I need to say? Mm-hmm. Like, it's always like, where's the script? Where's the little
no magic words?
Yeah, where's the 3x5 note card with the exact thing on it that I need? But after a long time, it's finally understanding, like, who do I need to be to influence this person? And that is a dramatically powerful game changer right there for sure.
Absolutely. The moment you can step into a certain identity state and be something, then everything you say and everything you do becomes extraordinarily congruent. And that's the problem. That's why lie detection works or doesn't work. The more incongruent a person is, the more the words don't match the behaviors, don't match the postures or whatever, the more we send these incoherent messages that flag us as doing something weird. But when you can step into an identity state, a persona, a way of being, then everything that you do emanates from the right posture, the right breathing, the right body feelings, your tonality is right, your gestures are more congruent. Everything comes from the reptile brain or the lizard brain up. And you can step into and deliver a message with comfort and sincerity and, it's comfort and sincerity in a way that causes people to just accept it.
Yeah, totally agree. And what you were saying about the masks, that's what I think is the number one problem therapists and persuaders ever have in their practice, is that they sell and persuade the mask instead of the person wearing the mask.
Amen. Amen.
And they don't know, A, how to take off the mask, or B, how to see behind it to actually speak to the human and not the mask. And there are situations, especially if you're an interrogator, where you want the mask to be on and you do want to talk to that mask, and you even want to make it a little bit thicker, maybe add some paint onto the mask. But most of the time, you want to live back there behind that mask, communicating to the mask, but treating them as if they were the mask.
Excellent. And an excellent distinction.
Of metaphors.
Excellent distinction, because one of the things when I was, studying, I come to face reading and from a different perspective, but one of the things we talk about in the face reading systems that I do is this concept of public personas and private personas, and how in certain contexts, especially business contexts, it's important to talk to the mask while understanding the private person, and knowing which to do when or what sequence to stimulate those in gives you tremendous psychological and emotional leverage over a person's behavior and perceptions. Absolutely.
So I think one of those things, and that leads me to kind of the next thing I was going to ask you about, is how can, if I know my outcome is here, what are the things I can do to a person? And I'm asking you as a student, let's just say.
Okay.
I know my outcome is here. How do I prime a person to make this kind of a byproduct? Or this is just kind of automatic. If all the priming and all the seeds or groundwork is laid from the beginning, that's how I tend to view it. A, do you view it the same way? And B, what techniques might you use to get someone in that scenario? I think it depends on the context and what I want them to do versus where they want to go. But the more rapidly I can engineer the context where it's natural for them to want to go in the direction that I want them to go, the easier it is. So everything is really about, first of all, context. Who do I need to be naturally? But in that context, who do I need to be? Right? And how can I align their selfish goals or their selfish desires with what I want them to do? Right? And one of the fastest ways that we can use that is through things like the ECHO technique and criteria value solicitation and variations of that. But a lot, again, it's very, very context dependent. But as long as you can create, and even in a story concept or context, a scenario where these people will do things like in Eric Knowles's work on resistance and persuasion. One of the things that he found was the most effective way to remove resistance to persuasion was to tell stories with which the changes you want to make are embedded in the background. It can prime people's behaviors, can prime people's attitudes, even if the attitudes they have going into the story are actually contrary to the protagonist of the story, because human beings can't argue or won't necessarily argue with another human being's experience, even if the character is fictional. You can prime them to behave certain ways and change their RAS by telling stories in which the processes you want them to engage in are embedded within the background of the story, but also within the content or the story itself. And so you can guide people through very gradual change work or attitudinal shifts by how you link your stories together. Wow. Yeah, I love that. And that's a wildly different answer than I would have given. And I still agree with you 100% that is absolutely fantastic. Fantastic way. I'm curious, just so I understand better and for the benefit of everybody here, and again, maybe it's better to drill down on a specific context, because again, the context in which you operated and were trained in, where like this guy wants to cut your head off on the internet and you need to get him to drop dime on his compatriots.
right?
Right.
And of course, getting into the more forgiving applications. So enlighten us, tell us, your approach.
So I think, I think mine may be universal, which is a stupid thing to say. Obviously nothing is, but this one's pretty close. So I want what's called, and I'll give you a quick little micro lesson in neuroscience here for you who's joining us. I want you to understand basically that our brain's electric and our brain is chemical and our brain is ancient. So those are the three little things that we're really dealing with. And in the brain, the head of a neuron to get activated has to have an electrical stimulus. A neuron, as it's just kind of hanging out and chilling, is sitting at around negative 60 millivolts, which is what's called a neuronal resting potential. So it needs a pretty high electrical charge to bring it above that threshold to make it snap and actually send about positive 60 millivolts down the electron into the axon down and just kind of throw this cascade. But the moment it's been activated, the second time that you activate it, it's easier and it requires less stimulus. So hopefully that makes sense. Just like I activate it once, then the second time I want to go for it, it's like neuron fractionation. Your neurons are always being fractionated, so it's easier to do it the second time. So if I can jam electricity, and this is kind of what I really focus on for priming, if I can jam electricity into an emotional pocket or an area of the brain, like the occipital cortex, where we store kind of visual information and stuff, I want to jam it in there because the electricity acts as a residual force. So that if I need to call that up again in just a few minutes, those neurons are way easier to activate. So from the very beginning of a conversation, I may escalate something I call deviance, which is not being like a sexual deviant or anything, but a deviation from normal behavior. I'm going to start escalating that from the first probably 45 seconds of the conversation, no matter how long it is. But I'm going to start moving this away until the brain's thinking over and over, this is different. This is different. This isn't, I can't really compare this conversation to anything in the past. So I need to pay attention to what's going on. So I kind of view priming from a neuroscience electrical perspective. I want to jam, just kind of stuff some electricity where I want it to be later.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you were describing that process, the mental dynamic that kept coming up was what in hypnosis and in influence we call the law of compliance. Where if I can inject information into somebody and give them a suggestion or a direction, and they follow it, they become predisposed or primed to following the next direction I give. So there's this fractionation idea that you're talking about. But you're injecting it with this idea. I'm going to do something very different from what they're expecting, but maybe just a tiny bit, so it's not too big. And that's exactly how you apply what we call the law of compliance. Is you give small directions or small deviations, test to see that they've done it. If they don't, then you backtrack and get even smaller until they do start to comply. And then you, degree by degree by degree by degree, you can lead them into a completely different set of behaviors that are alien to how they normally do things. Yes.
And you know where that's cognitive behavioral therapy. You know where cognitive behavioral therapy came from? I don't know if you know this or
not. Enlighten us.
It came from Northern Korea when US soldiers were being made to sign these petitions and say, I hate the United States, I hate America. And it's terrifying to our country that they have some kind of technology to reprogram these people. And when all it was what we call now cognitive behavioral therapy. Guess what cognitive behavioral therapy used to be called? It was called brainwashing.
Brainwashing.
So when someone says brainwashing, they're actually talking about cognitive behavioral therapy or a different kind of, also approved by the American Psychological Association, therapy called aversion therapy. Those two therapies are also brainwashing, and they're effective because we're brainwashing people to feel better. We're brainwashing someone to think differently about an eating disorder. We're brainwashing someone not to have any kind of depressive, suicidal, or self-harm type of thoughts anymore. They're effective. If I can make you hate your country, I can also make you probably not eat 16 pounds of cheesecake over the course of a weekend.
Damn it. Oh, sorry. Did that come out of me? Sorry. But you know what? It's so, and again, in the Killer Influence Man, one of the first things we talk about, to your point, is reasons why people fail at material. And one of the first things is that they think what they're doing is somehow unethical, or that the influencing human beings is bad. And the old chestnut is, you can't not do it, right? You're going to, but influence doesn't care what vector or direction you apply it. If you're a good person and you have good intentions, then you can use this as a powerful force to bring every good thing you want, not just into your life, but into the lives of everyone you care about, whether that's on a professional level in a therapy client relationship, whether it's interrelational between your spouse and yourself, you and your children, ad infinitum, right? The idea is the more powerful you become with these skills, the more rapidly every level of your life gets easier, and the more good you can bring into the world. Because the truth of the matter is, you're no good to the world broke. You're no good to the world disempowered. You're no good to the world unable to get the things you want. If you want to share, you've got to have something to share with or to share from. These are the skills that allow you to do that. Once you get that bad wiring out of your head, that for some reason exerting influence is somehow evil, right?
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, I had one person say something along the lines of like, this is like, if I smile too much during a conversation, I'm being inauthentic. And I'm always just, my default answer inside my head, and I'll just say this on here, probably not appropriate, but my default answer is, if you've ever held in a fart, then you're inauthentic. You are an inauthentic human being. You've been deceiving everyone. So I think the reason we learn manners and say please and thank you, and where our bread plate goes and our drink goes on a table, those things are ways to show respect. They're not natural ways of behaving, because natural ways of behaving mean I might shake someone's hand and say, wow, you are really ugly and it's not very good to meet you. We might just be, that's authentic. And authentic is bad, because our society thrives on us being partially dishonest to help get the outcomes from other people. If every therapist in the world was authentic, they would just tell their patients, I don't want to hear your shit. Please leave my office. I would just like you to send me a check.
Yep.
That would be it.
Yeah.
So on all of this stuff, one of the things I wanted to talk about when it comes down to authenticity is that I've always found that the ancestors are more powerful than family in life. Like the previous 2,000 generations of you, and with your DNA in them, have more power over you than your mom, your dad, your teachers, and every lesson you've learned in your whole life. And there's this experiment, which David, I don't know if you remember this from Virginia, but it was these people would sit. It was an experiment, but these people would sit inside of a room filling with smoke detectors going off long enough to die. And it was not just like a bunch of them, 100% of people will sit in a room long enough to die of asphyxiation, because 9 other people who are involved with the experiment are actors. They're just deciding to sit there. So our ancestor says, you do what the tribe does. Our training in elementary school, and our parents and that fireman who came to speak to your 8th grade class tells you to get the hell out of there. None of that holds even a candle to what a million years of ancestors have jammed into your DNA. Amen. You are programmed to obey the tribe around you. So that's why, like, my number one theory before anything else about persuasion and influence is good influence works because our ancestors needed to live.
Amen. 100%.
All of those things that we can capitalize first, which we're going to really dissect from an evolutionary perspective, how to hack into that thing. So like, if it's hard to make somebody feel not depressed as a therapist, imagine making someone using therapy techniques, making a person sit in a room full of smoke until they're dead. That's hard to do. But if you can capitalize on utilizing the voices of ancestors, you're a lot better than using the voices of influence and stuff like that. I don't mean all influence is bad. What I mean is, let's start by understanding the ancestral triggers because they're 10 times more powerful than what we learn throughout our life.
I 100% agree with that. A little funny anecdote really quick. I'll try to be brief, but it really does go to your point about the power of the group and something that we're going to be talking a lot about in Orlando, which is the power of confusion. So when I was in medical school, I was in my third year. I was a 4-year program taught in 3, so it was a trimester system. And I was looking at my schedule, and I was getting ready to go into my second year or my second round of clinical internships. And I noticed that there was one class I needed to graduate, and it was taught at a very specific time. And the only way I was going to be able to make it work was if I got a specific time slot in my clinical rotations. So I said, okay, well, it's very simple. I'll just get to the clinic early. I'll register for that time slot and it'll be fine. Well, did you ever have one of those days where you start off with the best of intentions and every motherfucking thing goes wrong, right? I get up, I'm rushing out the door. I spill something on my pants. I got to change. I rush out to my car and my tire's flat. I'm get the tire fixed. I'm rushing to the campus and there's construction and I got a detour. Bottom line is I get to the clinic. I think clinical rotations started at our clinical registration started around 12 p.m. I get there at 11:45. There are 500 students ahead of me. I walk into the waiting room of the clinic. There's people everywhere. There's people against the wall. There's people sitting in the chairs. There's people around the halls. And I'm looking around going, motherfucker, I'm screwed. I'm like, and all of a sudden, boom, my Snyder sense went off. And so I started looking around and I found my friend Matt. Now, Matt is very tall. He's also very good looking. So I looked around, I saw the chaos all around me. It's 15 minutes till go time. I don't want to be caught in a stampede. So what do? I yell at the top of my lungs, line forms behind Matt. And I step and I walk right behind Matt. Just like I'm queuing up. And every human being in the place lined up right behind me, right out the door. Okay. Matt looks at me, looks at all the people lined up behind me, goes, dude, you're scary. And so 15 minutes goes up, they open enrollment. He walks up to the counter, picks up the pen, turns around, looks at me and hands it to me. He says, go ahead.
It's so true that we're hyper responsive in crowds, especially like we have things. So search YouTube for this later tonight. Write this down in your notes. Write this down. Actually, pick up a pen, write it down. Write in the bystander effect and watch how our IQ just diminishes into this little ball once we're around a group. And it's not because we're stupid. It's not because crowds are stupid. It's because look at a group of deer in the woods. They can't all listen to everything in the same direction. So it just takes one deer to go, huh? Like that. And like they hear something and then all the other deer wind up going, huh? Because the first deer does. Not because they heard something, but because one deer did it. So it kept us alive. It kept our ancestors alive. We're out in the middle of the field grabbing a bunch of blueberries or whatever. And a saber-toothed tiger came along. That was really, really, really important to keeping us alive a long time ago. So that's why we're here. And we're so hyper responsive to the first person to do something in a group setting, especially when it's strangers, will always take the lead in people's mind. And not a single person like David in your scenario in that hallway, nobody even questioned it. They were just like, oh, okay, this is where the line is. They're not making a conscious weighing these choices. It's a social response to tribe behavior. And if you took charge of that tribe, this goes right back to confidence, what we were talking about a second ago. David, or that guy in the vest, I'm guessing you wore a vest back then.
Actually, I didn't. There's a whole origin story behind the vest. But I did wear dragon-colored Hawaiian shirts. That was my thing in acupuncture school. I was also about 50 pounds heavier.
That's in their brain. That's inside the human brain where they're thinking he would never act like that unless he had a ton of credibility, a ton of accolades, and everyone else always does what he says. And he shouldn't have a reason to do that unless he's doing that, so because nobody will do it. We are so hardwired to look for evidence and reasons and permission and roles anytime we're doing anything that we will assume everyone else is. So the moment someone takes charge, we're like, oh, they must have permission. They must have permission from somewhere else, because I would never do that without permission. So that's how easy it is to do stuff like that. So you don't need permission, to go back to what we said earlier.
You absolutely don't. And one of the things that the things that were going on in my head, in addition to everything you've talked about, when I looked at Matt, he was easy to see. He was tall. Tall people automatically have more authority. Plus, he was really good looking. Right. And so when I made the statement that I made, if I'd have said line starts behind me, they'd all looked at me and go, fuck you. But because I was actually scapegoating poor Matt, right? Oh, well, nobody in their right mind would let somebody else be the head of the line. Must be true. And so, boom, instant credibility, because with certainty, with comfort, I said, line starts behind Matt. And I demonstrated the desired behavior, right? And they lined up just like lemmings.
It's amazing. And what's funny is, like, neither one of us are vaccinated against that. We can teach it all day, and we may be a little 1% less likely to do something like that, but we're still there. Like, that is so deep in there.
It really
I don't
is.
care. You could have like brain shock therapy for an entire year. You can wipe your entire memory, and the society tribal response is still going to be buried down in there.
And that's one of the things I think is so cool about what we'll be doing in Orlando, is we're going to teach people how to engineer and leverage those deep level ancestral programs to really maximize your influence in minimum time. But the secret to it is you've got to be somebody. I think you said it better than probably anybody else. And it was always in the context of, I can take this, YouTube superstar, PhD in influence and persuasion. I can put him next to Charles Manson or Bill Clinton. Who's going to get the sale? Right? Who's going to close the deal? Who's going to convince somebody to do something? It's not going to be the PhD. It's going to be the person who is the wielder of influence, not somebody who just knows a few techniques. And so that being level is one of the things that we're really going to drill down on and create as the platform for all of your other influence techniques in the 4-day.
Yeah, and within those 4 days, we're going to walk you through a exact formula, not just here's some cool theories, here's some crap we read in Psychology Today magazine. Dave's been doing this probably since I was prepubescent, and even myself, I've been doing it. I've passed the 30,000 hour mark a very long time ago in this field, and we're going to give you results based, not theory based, not, hey, we think this might work for you, but this is what works, step-by-step results-based stuff on how to trigger those ancestral responses. And one of the things I really want you to take away from this today, if you take away nothing else, is that please write this down, print it out, put it on your refrigerator. I do not need permission.
Boom.
And I want you to take that out of, like, I'm sure somebody will say like something about dating or like sexual assault or something like that, because that came up before. What I mean is, no one's going to come up and give you permission to act confident. You do not need permission to be the 10x confident version of yourself. You can do it right now. There is nothing holding you back. These beliefs you have about somebody, and I want you just to imagine, I want to help you identify your top limiting belief right now, while we're here in this video call. If you just look at the camera right now, or look at your screen and see a person, like you're in an airport and you see someone with 1,000 times the level of confidence that you have, getting exactly what they want, getting 10 times more than you ever imagine yourself getting, what's your first response to that person? Are they tricking people? Are they faking it? Are they being overly posturing? Whatever your first response is possibly your limiting belief about maybe how you should approach it. So I can't act that way because it's posturing. I can't act that way because, and that might be one of those things holding you back from deciding to do it right now. Decide that tomorrow. Let everyone that you know, let everyone that you interact with tomorrow be the person that asks you, what the hell happened to you? What changed? What the hell happened? Why are you so different? You deserve it. You absolutely deserve it. And don't think that, like, if you're not going to do it and like, oh, I'm going to make myself smaller, then someone else will just take advantage. And there's no reason that someone else should have anything else more than you should. You absolutely deserve it. No one's coming to save you, and no one's going to come and give you permission. You've already got it. If you need it from me, here it is. You've got permission.
Excellent point. And the truth is that, Chase and I we've been talking about doing this particular event for 2-3 years now. It's been,
yeah.
And, one of the things that is important about trust and permission is you give yourself permission to be somebody different, be the person you want to be instead of the person society and culture have conspired to make you. Right. And it starts with giving yourself permission to do something different. So we want to help you with that. So when you come to SPYCRAFT in Orlando, we're going to help you that personally. But we also want you to we want to make it easier for you to take the actions. So Chase and I were kind of discussing, how can we make this easier? How can we allow you guys to kind of feel more confident going forward and really support you beyond SPYCRAFT, beyond just the 4-day event. And so we put our heads together and we came up with a special package that we think will help you to really supercharge everything that you get in the 4 days in Orlando. And like I said, we only have 17 slots left. We are maxed out at 50 due to at that time when we made the reservations, it leveled us out at 50. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to share with you the package that Chase and I put together and kind of go through that with you if you want. And then when that's done, and I don't know what Chase's schedule's like, but once we're done with that, I'm happy to come back and actually answer more of these amazing questions that I see coming up here. But before I move into that, have you guys been getting value out of this? Has this been good? Type in the chat, if this has been useful for you. Gold. Yep. Take
wow.
Pages of notes.
Thanks, everyone.
If we were to do these again, these kind of AMAs together in the future, do you think it'd be something you'd like to participate in? Type yes or yes. Oh, cool. Excellent. All right. So again, I'm gonna in the interest of time, I'm gonna kind of paraphrase a little bit what we've got going on. We have a full copy of the syllabus on our website. I'll show you the link to go to that. Let me just go through this really quickly, and I'm gonna jump back and forth because some of these special programs and bonuses that Chase has put together, he's the expert on. He's going to explain what they're going to do for you, and then I'll show you my contributions, and we'll build on that. So without further ado, I'd like to share with you what I like to call our SPYCRAFT Secrets of Human Influence Super Training. This will be on September 23rd through the 26th at the Orlando World Center Marriott. 8701 World Center Drive, Orlando, Florida. On day one, we'll be talking about Introduction to Strategic Human Influence. We'll be covering the I3 model, the Universal Persuasion Protocol, 4 pillars of irresistible hypnotic influence. This is another one of those areas where Chase and I's systems overlap dramatically. Again, as you can see, I'm not going to go through every single thing here, but you can see Chase is going to be teaching the second day. He'll be talking about the brain, evolution, and how influence really works. You'll learn his amazing 6-minute X-ray skills for people reading and lie detection. Amazing, amazing stuff. If you wanted a fast, quick, and easy way to just instantly get a beat on people, understand their personality, you're going to get the deep dive into this. You're going to learn powerful elicitation techniques. I think there's like 29 of them. These are ways to get people to give you information without ever asking a question. That's day one. On day two, Chase is going to pick up where he left off. He's going to talk about applying people reading to your influence skills and the meaning of words exercises. He's going to introduce you to linguistics and embedded commands, behavioral entrainment, and gestural referencing. These are things that he talks a lot in his mastery program. I have found gestural hemispheric tendencies to be amazingly powerful, and you'll learn how to integrate that into the killer influence systems that I'll be teaching as well. You'll be able to use and apply confusion. These are level 1 techniques. This is your introduction to understanding that human beings will do just about anything to get out of confusion, and you'll learn how to apply those techniques out in the field, actually. So Then I'll be picking up with the 7 most psychologically powerful patterns in human language, how to integrate those in with the behavioral influence and techniques that Chase has been saying. We'll talk about the fantastic 4 tactics of subliminal influence. If you're going to tell stories, if you're going to begin to embed commands, things of that nature, you need to have these 4 techniques working in tandem to get the maximum influence in minimum time. We'll talk about the emotional bonding checklist, how to tap into a person's emotional reasons for doing anything you want. That's the end of day 2. Day 3, we're going to talk about the resistance removal formula, how to make anybody generate a reason for doing the exact thing they just told you they didn't want to do. We're going to talk about one of the most powerful interactive processes imaginable called the 3 magic questions that lead to liking, trust, and love. It works perfectly with all the tactics that Chase has been espousing. In fact, you can deploy them from within this and amplify the power of everything. In fact, Chase actually has told me he's used this in interrogations. We're going to talk about proxemic hypnotic operators and nonverbal influence tactics, how to manage the space and the gestural aspects of your communication to amplify and deliver congruent, powerful messages consciously and subconsciously. We're going to talk about mastering confusion methods, advanced techniques, and live demonstrations. You're going to actually get to experience this. Chase is going to do demos. You're going to break up. You're going to practice this. You're going to be given all kinds of really cool drills to really get used to delivering confusion as a way to open up a window into a person's unconscious and lead them through deviance. And that's what Chase was talking about earlier, is injecting those small changes away from something different and guiding them step by step, thin slice by thin slice, through the behavioral changes you want them to make. How to influence how influence actually hacks the brain. You'll get a deep dive into the neuroscience behind all of the things that we're doing. How to hack Cialdini's principles. If you're not familiar with these and you don't have his book, Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, when would now be a good time to bone up on that before you come to the training? Right? We're going to talk about negative dissociation and positive dissociation. This is absolutely diabolical in terms of its ability to create an identity state in another human being that causes them to become the person you need them to be for them to do what you want them to do. And they will move heaven and earth to be congruent with that new identity that you've created. Okay. You learn how to use compounded embedded commands with add-ons for efficacy. I don't even know what that means. I'm sure Chase will teach you, but it's awesome, right? If it's anything like the stuff I've seen from Chase before, it's going to be amazingly cool. Chase will be starting up by seeing all about authority hacking, how authority hacks the brain, how to use authority, how to assess authority, evolution in our brains, the fate model. I love this. This is actually one of the most powerful things I've seen him put out. It's fast, it's easy, it's effective, and it really helps you to understand influence and analysis of human behavior. Discipline and the pendulum principle. And then finally, we're gonna wrap up with kind of a tag team. We're going to talk about state control to frame control, the secrets of emotional contagion, how to be somebody, how to utilize that, how to set a frame, how to maintain a frame, how to exude and radiate authority, authenticity, and charisma on command. You heard me mention these at the beginning of our program, the Master and Commander technique, the Rockstar Meta Frame, the Open Heart Trust Trigger. And of course, for those of you interested in attraction applications or things of that nature, we're going to talk about the 4-fold meta frame. These are all identity states that you can step into, that once you understand how they're built, you can just flip a switch, step into them, and all of a sudden you start giving yourself permission to behave in ways that are incongruent with the situation you find yourself in and getting your outcome. We'll talk about renegade reframing and the art of conversation and belief change. These are 14 patterns for destroying objections and changing beliefs during normal conversations. Okay, so that's what we've got planned. And then, of course, what will happen is the minute you guys get in the room, we're going to take your temperature. We're going to find out what you need. We're going to find out what you want to accomplish. And we're going to modify this curriculum just a little bit so that every one of you walk out with exactly what you came for. Okay, that's our job, to make sure that the people walking into that room come out with the exact skill sets that they wanted. Okay, so if you were to sign up at the door, it would be $47.97, but we're not going to charge you that. In fact, for those of you who want to get one of those last remaining seats, we're going to give it to you. And Chase yelled at me big time for this. So I want you to know that I took a major tongue lashing for this. It's $19.90. We're going to let you, not for $47.97, not for $37.97, not even $27.97. You can get it all for just one low installment of $19.97. And all you got to do to get that is to go, the link is appearing in your link below. But here's the cool part. We want you to take action. We want you to stop doing what you've always done so you can get something you maybe have never gotten before. So we've put together some really cool extra bonuses. And these bonuses are only good until we log off the webinar. So when Chase and I sign off, these bonuses go away. So here's what else we've got for you. For those of you who grab one of the few remaining slots, you're also going to get, this is one of the most amazing bonuses. I was surprised that Chase allowed us to do this. This is Chase Hughes Behavior Mastery Coaching Program. Chase has offered to give everyone who registers tonight on the webinar, if you've already registered for SPYCRAFT, call Stephanie. She will tell you how to qualify for this. If you are brand new, this is for you. Okay, this is a 1-month trial membership to his 12-month behavioral coaching masterclass. It's a $3,549 value. We're going to give it to you absolutely free. If you combine the value of the seminar with the total of this coaching program, it was $83,000. It's $8,346. Chase, just real quick, can you kind of tell people what they're going to get as part of your coaching during that 1-month trial? What's it going to let them do?
Yeah, and I apologize. I think I've got the sun coming in here. But with this mastery coaching group is a very private group of people, and an interview is absolutely required. Even if you get the mastery thing as a bonus today, 100%, you will go through an interview. You will be screened before joining this program, period, because it's a private group of people. We go through everything. We go through how to use subsonic frequencies. We go from a chemical level of what chemicals, like external to the body, influence human behavior. And we're breaking down everything that I ever teach in my life multiple times a week in study groups for an entire year of programming, training, and all this stuff that you could ever possibly want and influence. And you're a part of this unstoppable community of incredible people. And the master group itself is like somewhere like, thank you. My assistant's holding up a briefcase at the window here.
You go, Sarah.
Hi.
So this, the master group is probably, I want to always keep it under 100. So it's a small group of people. We even meet up twice a year, and once a year we have a black tie event in either the Cayman Islands somewhere or in Cabo. And it's usually in Cabo. This year it will be in Cabo. There's a black tie gala for charity, benefiting wounded warriors and stuff like that. But the mastery group is, bar none, extremely advanced influence training, very similar and very different than stuff you might learn with David. And it's from my perspective of an interrogator, an intelligence operations expert, and things like that.
Very cool. Very cool. And of course, so total value is $8,348, I believe, if I'm reading that correctly. But he didn't stop there. Chase actually went a little bit further, and he's given us a second bonus. And this bonus is called the Behavioral Skills Breakthrough Home Study Course. It's a 6-hour deep dive into some of the most powerful breakthroughs in analyzing and understanding and influencing human behavior. This, I believe, is an immediate download. So the moment you register for the training, Stephanie will send your information to Sarah. Sarah will give you access to this course. It's a $497 value, and we're going to give it to you absolutely free. Chase, can you kind of give us a little bit of an understanding of what goes on with the behavioral breakthrough training, or the breakthrough training?
The behavior breakthrough training is online. It's self-paced, and you go module by module, and all of those things are very precise and calculated modules with no fluff and no filler. They're fully designed to walk you through the exact mindset to start seeing people differently right away and seeing the world as a behavior profiler and a behavioral expert. Instead of all the techniques first, I want to get your mindset shift first and then start giving you those techniques inside that module. And that's what that module is. It's mindset first. I want you to actually change the way that you see other human beings, because you can learn all these techniques in the world. If you're still looking at them from the wrong way, then we're making a big mistake, because nobody, even when it comes to maybe I'm thinking about buying a ticket to this webinar, or I'm making an investment somewhere, we can only see the landscape and make decisions based on our perspective. So I can't make decisions from the top of a mountain until I'm actually at the top of the mountain. So I might pay this guy, you might pay me to escort you up the mountain, But once you're there at the top of the mountain, you can see everything completely differently. All of your decisions and focal points are going to change. Your just the way that you make decisions based on perspective has a dramatic shift, and that's what that course is designed to do.
Perfect. I'm getting excited just hearing it. Like I said, I've been a fan of yours for quite a long time. I've got quite a few of your courses. Some you don't even offer anymore. So I can, and again, a lot of you have come from Chase's World, so you know the quality of the information you're going to get. We're all about applying, not just giving you the information, it's about being able to apply the information. And so that's the skill set that you're going to get. And so this package is designed for people who, once they've come out of the 4-day with bristling with all this cosmic power, how do you get it in? How do you get in the game? How do you take action? How do you make things happen? But we're not going to stop there because, of course, not to be outdone, I had to throw in some stuff too. So with your permission, I'd like to share with you some other things I've added that I think will help to round out what Chase is giving you, as well as giving you another perspective on some of the different aspects of these things. So here's what we got for you. We're also going to include one of my flagship programs. This is called the Stealth Instant Conversational Hypnosis Crash Course. Stealth is an acronym, believe it or not, stands for Strategic Suggestion Through Emotionally Amplified, Linguistically Transmitted Hypnosis. This is going to drill down. It's going to teach you the 6-stage universal persuasion protocol. It's a formula that allows you to go from any situation, any circumstance, from the boardroom to the bar room, to the classroom, to the therapy room, to the interrogation room, to the jury room, to the bedroom. Right? It teaches you step by step, not only how to set an outcome, but how to control your state. It's going to teach you that 6-step universal persuasion protocol. Then it's going to drill down into the 7 most powerful language patterns that exist. If it were possible to what would you do if you had the power to make anything you say mean anything you want in the minds of your listener? Do you think that would be a useful skill to have? There's a language pattern that will do that perfectly. What if you could make anything you want seem to cause anything you want in the minds of your listener? Would that be a superpower to have? We're going to show you the simple language patterns that allow you to do that. Second of all, we're going to teach you how to redirect a person's internal focus of awareness so that, and their mind begin to automate whatever you want in any direction that you want. It's just one language pattern can do all that, even when you know it's being done, right? And then what if you had the ability to make the internal pictures and movies a person's creating in their minds exactly match what you describe? There's a language pattern that will do that. When you combine these, you get a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. It makes everything you say extremely compelling, absorption facilitating, and it allows you to leverage everything that you're going to deliver from the other programs. We're also going to teach you instant and rapid inductions, and as well, I believe there's also a short course on lie detection, as well as 6 extra videos on me teaching these language patterns to a live audience. So it's a $997 value. We're going to include this as part of our fast action bonus. And then finally, for those of you who want a little extra, total value now is $9,840. We're also going to include a free VIP super ticket. This will give you a free admission to any single live event in our 2021-2022 calendar, as long as you meet the requirements. Chances are, if you've been through Chase's trainings, you've been through some of our previous trainings, you'll probably do that. Let me explain a little bit about our VIP super tickets. This ticket does not expire. So if you're one of the first 17 people to grab one of the few remaining seats for SPYCRAFT today, you're going to allow yourself to come into the head of the line of any training, whether it's Identity by Design, whether it's our CPI or Killer Influence programs. It takes you 2 years to get to a training. If you're let's say you're in Australia, or you're in Europe or the UK, and you can't get here, well, that ticket doesn't expire. So you have a free admission to any single live event of your choice until you use it. If you want to gift it to somebody so they can come to an event, you can do that. If something comes up at the last minute, let's say you're getting ready to come to an event, all of a sudden there's a new round of COVID restrictions, or your boss is a jerk and doesn't let you go, or there's a death in the family. All you do is pick up the phone, you let Stephanie know, we'll move you to another training. Let's say a training is filled up. Let's say it's you've missed out on all the early birds, right? And you want to come to a training. If you have this VIP super ticket, we'll find you a seat. We'll move you right to the head of the line. Let's say you want to come to a training in Europe, for example, where everything is in euro or pound sterling. And there's a big price difference, exchange rate between what's going on in Europe and the price range we have here. Doesn't matter. You get to come to the head of the line. So this This is your ticket. You have it until you use it. It gets you admission into any single live event of your choice. It's a $2,250 value because that's what we charge at the door now. Total combined value, if you looked at everything we talked about, is over $12,990. But we're obviously, we want to give you the best deal humanly possible. You already kind of had a primer on this. We're not going to charge you $12,090. We're not going to charge you $7,347. We're not going to charge you $47.97, which is at the door price, by the way. If you wait until the last minute and show up, provided we're not sold out, that's what you're going to get. $47.97 to get those 4 days. But we're not going to charge you that today. We're not even going to ask you for that today. Okay, we're not even going to ask for $33.47. We're not going to ask for $23.47. As you remember from the previous slide, you get it all for low one-time investment of just $19.97. If you know you want to go, but maybe cash flow is a little slow, all you got to do, we can break that up into 3 easy installments of just $697. And you can start downloading the bonuses today. All you got to do to get started is go to www.nlppower.com/SHI. If you see a different URL in the chat, don't worry. If you just follow the links, it'll take you to the same page. www.nlppower.com/SHI. Click on the enroll now button and you'll be able to do that. Okay. So go ahead. The link should be in the chat. And so for those of you who may have been having bladder issues, what I'd like you guys to do is go ahead and let's take a, what do you think, Chase? You want to give them like a 7-minute bathroom break and then come back and start answering more questions?
Yeah, I will have to be going here in just a bit, but
Okay.
I think it's great. What I think might be a beneficial thing is talk about money psychology right when we come back.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do a 5-minute break, and then the amazing Chase Hughes will discuss money psychology.
We'll see you in a bit.
So the question was asked, is it possible to attend remotely? We're going to work on that right now. As of right now, there is no remote option. If we work out the tech and the stable internet connection, and we can effectively generate the same quality of training, then we will let people know about a possible remote option. But as of right now, we're not offering one. You got to be there if you can. Okay. I don't think Chase is back yet, but I have a bunch of cool questions that oh. Okay. For those of you who would like a remote option, call Stephanie. Call Stephanie at 858-282-4663, and she will start to put a list together. If we get enough requests for the remote option, now to qualify for the remote option, you actually have to be unable to attend in person. Okay, this is what we call a hybrid event, which means if you are physically prohibited from attending live, then we will, if we have enough people who are requesting it, then we will work on putting together a remote option for you. But as of right now, we're not going to be offering that unless we get a ridiculous number of people who actually want it. And again, there's a vetting process that you're going to go through. It's not about doing it remotely just because you don't want to travel. It's because you can't travel. Okay, so we're going to talk about money psychology. I think this is something that Chase and I had a big discussion about when we were kind of going over our plan for today. And I think it's something that is relevant to all of us. It's something that I certainly have classes on it, and we all are at different levels of that work. So I think I'm going to open the floor. I have a ton of really good questions here. I don't know, again, I know Chase's time is very valuable. We've been on almost 2 hours, a little over 2 hours already. But I have pardon my French, a shit ton of questions here that people want to ask. So without further ado, let's talk about money psychology and how we can start to affect our money psychology to become more of the person we want to be and have the resources we need to do things like SPYCRAFT and Chase's advanced mastery trainings, which I also want to do, and buy cool planes and travel around the world. Chase, the floor is yours.
All right. Am I on now?
You are totally on.
I'm a little fuzzy. So one thing I really want to say is that I struggle with this for a very long time. I was struggling with money psychology on making investments and on spending my money on developing myself and asking for money. And until somebody asked me one day, do you think your stuff changes people's lives? I said, 100%. I've seen all this stuff. And it really changed the way that I view offering this stuff to anybody, that I view it as an imperative that if I care about you as a person, I want you to have this. I do not want you to fail. And in the last probably 2 years in setting this up, I've gone from I need $800 to pay a bill because I retired from the Navy. I did not write a resume because I knew that I would probably wind up using it. I would be a government contractor somewhere. So I wrote no resume. I went from worrying about $800 to now I'm in Wichita, Kansas, going to the Cessna factory to look at planes to buy in a couple of weeks. And I'm talking about an actual plane that holds like 10, 15 people. And the big difference that was made was in the way that I think about how I'm growing and what's happening. So I made investments in the military. And when I was younger, I would buy a cool car. I would buy a house. I would buy all of these things that gave me almost nothing. So even if I spent like $100K right now on a piece of property, after 7 years or 8 years, and we pay off the interest and the debt starts to, kind of go down a little bit, and I finally sell that thing. After 8 years, I have made maybe like 37 grand. Even in today's market where it's really good, I've made 37 grand by spending $100,000 on a good real estate investment. So after 8 years, I've made the income of a Walmart employee, and I'm excited about an investment. And that sounded okay to me. They're like, okay, maybe if I just work my ass off for 8 years, I can make the same amount of money as like 37 grand, which sounded so sound and perfect and logical to me at the time. And I never understood that investing in me and changing who I was and changing my capabilities, which I can't do on YouTube. And I tried like, oh, let me just go. I watched some YouTube videos about this. And finally, my mentor told me a story about how monkeys get caught or trapped for sale in Africa, that they would put like a hard object, like an apricot, mostly an apricot or a fig, inside of a glass jar. And the monkey would reach in, grab a hold of it, and he'd be running around with this glass jar on his hand for days, and it would make him 1,000 times easier to catch. So what happens is this monkey reaches in, he doesn't want to let go of this one little thing he has because that's his only way of life. That's exactly how I was living my life. I don't want to let go of this thing because I don't know what's ahead of me. And that's what a lot of people are going through, that a lot of us, especially me, I had to let go of this one thing so I could take hold of exactly what was going to make me better. I wanted a better life, but I didn't want to let go of this little apricot. So that's what I'm kind of asking you to do today, is to make the same shift that I did, that this tiny thing right here is something you can let go of somewhere else and take charge of who you are, take charge of how much money you make, take charge of the results that you're getting in your entire life. This is a big shift. This is a transformational shift for some people, viewing it as a price instead of an investment. And that is the biggest shift that I ever made in my entire life, was to reach over and just grab something that was going to make me better as a human being, and taking control of my results. And the way that I change the world around me is going to determine the income level that I can make. I can buy a jet right now. And I never thought that was even possible. I just thought I'll never be one of those people. That's not real. They kind of live up in the clouds. It's not a real possibility for anybody. But that changed with my psychology. It didn't change with going to college. It didn't change with anything except for understanding how investments work and knowing that I am the principal thing that I should be investing in. Me, not the house, not the car. I can go buy a really fancy Porsche and make people think that I changed the world, make people think that I have an impact on the world. I can go get the Gucci belt or the Versace belt, whatever the hell we were talking about earlier, and trick people into thinking that that's true. But I would much rather have the capability to buy the entire store than the capability to buy one belt. And the moment that I got to a place where I could go buy a store or I could go do any of these things, the role mentality, remember we talked about like your boss giving you the platinum card earlier, that's there 24/7, not because of the money, but because of the investments I've made in me. And I've leveled up to a place, honest to God, that has changed my life completely, to where I can take care of me finally, because I have had so much investment in me in these precise things that I wanted to level up. I knew these were high leverage things. I let go of one thing one time and made that first kind of a leap of faith. And I went down to let that go so I could take charge of exactly who I am and the impact that I'm making on the world. I am only saying that even if you don't do this, do something else for you. Do it for you. And make sure that it's an investment in something that's going to change the way that you impact the world around you, because that's going to bring you the most success. And understanding that price and investment are two very different ways of seeing the world. Price versus investment. So we have high net worth and low self-worth. I would much rather invest in things that are going to make me high self-worth, which is going to make me high net worth later on in my life, where I can go do the things that I want to do. If I want to immediately tomorrow go jump on a plane and go to Germany, provided there's no COVID, like stupid ass COVID stuff going on, I can do that. That's what I wanted. I wanted that freedom to do exactly what I want when I wanted to do it. And that 100% came down to human factors, but not just my ability to influence others, my ability to influence me and change my psychology. And that was a big shift for me. David?
I can't agree more. I really can't. One of the things that, and I think you said it very eloquently. You said, if you don't do this, what do you know? then do something. One of my mentors, Lisa Sasevich, used to say, well, if you're not going to do this, what are you going to do instead? What other opportunity are you going to have that's going to give you the skills that are going to keep paying you, that are going to keep returning on your investment for the rest of your life? And one of the challenges that we have is that we see the world, a lot of us, and this is true for me, and I'm judging from what you were saying, it was relatively true. We see the world from this place that we were indoctrinated and programmed into thinking about, oh, that $37,000 is, big money from this lower perspective. But these high self-esteem, high net worth people, they don't see the world that way. They have a different set of filters around what they're doing. And so you have to, if you want something different, you've got to do something different. Right. And I always tell my students that for everything you get from us, and I'm pretty sure it's true in Chase's world, please correct me if I'm wrong, but for everything you get from us, you're always going to pay twice. The first payment is the easy one. That's the revenue. That's the money, because you can always make more money, right? You can always make more money. It's the second investment, the investment of time, energy, effort to do the drills, to get the skills that takes you from access to ownership. And once you've made that second payment, you have a skill set that will continue to give you a return on your investment for as long as you choose to use it. In any situation, in any circumstance where you need to come out on top, when you need a win, whether it's a win-win or a win-lose, and you need to be on the winning side, these skills will be there for you. It'll give yourself permission to be the person you want to be, rather than the person that the universe and circumstances programmed you to be, right? Take that step, take that leap, click the links, get one of those few remaining seats, and let us help you take the road less traveled. Let us help you level up.
Can I add to this?
Yes. You say something?
Yeah, can I add to this? Like, if you live near a wealthy neighborhood, let's say within an hour of a neighborhood full of wealthy people, or you see them on YouTube or you see them online, you're going to start to see a trend that they're all kind of enjoying their life. And here's the number one problem in money psychology. And I don't think I've ever heard this before, that your brain's going to automatically put together the things that they have money and now they're happy and now they've got the life figured out. So money gave them what we talked about earlier. Money is the thing that gives them permission to act the way they do now, to where they're high self-worth. They value themselves really highly. I guarantee you 99% of those people, you go drive through that rich neighborhood that lives near you, you'll see people waving at each other, whether you don't see it anywhere else. You'll see people interacting with each other, easier to start conversations because they're high self-worth people. But the number one problem in money psychology that I had to get over personally, that I also see in lots of other people, and I'm treating this call right here as if I'm talking to you in person, begging to change your life right now with nothing else here. Please stop seeing it as they have money and now they're this way. It is not that way in real life. I just had dinner with Dr. Phil a few weeks ago. I've had dinner with all these Hollywood celebrities all week last week. There is no correlation there. That they become high self-worth, and they become high social skills, high everything else first, and the money comes after. And then we see them and think, oh, the money is the reason, not they became that way and then the money came. That was the biggest shift for me. And I can't speak for you. I don't know if it's true for you, but that was definitely it for me. I drove through a rich neighborhood. I drove through one of those high-end wealthy neighborhoods. And I automatically thought they're only happy, they're only interacting with each other, they only have good social skills because of the money. And it was the opposite. It was always the opposite. They didn't change. I had to change to see it differently. And that was probably the biggest lesson that I can impart to you. Even if you don't accept it fully right now, try it on for a few days and try that mindset on, that once I become a little bit different, I can start gaining some reward from becoming different. And I don't speak in terms of universe and energy like David does, ever. You will never hear me do that. But you will, David. But I think you're attracting something into your life. You're allowing something to come into your reticular activating system. You're allowing something to come into your awareness. And most importantly, write this down, please, into your deserving and your capabilities, the breadth of your capabilities and what you're capable of doing, what you're capable of charging people. If you run a coaching business or anything else, those capabilities change when your skills and understanding of human behavior change.
Amen.
And not just human behavior as those people out there. I mean you. I'm talking about you, your understanding of you, and being able to change your own psychology. I hope I'm doing this for you right now with nothing else attached to it, no strings attached. I want to change your life right this minute. Vow right now, please type in the comments, let go. We're talking about letting go of this thing. Don't even buy, if you don't buy this ticket, you don't come to our seminar, you don't make this investment today, please type let go in there. Just make that decision to let go one time, make some investment in yourself, even if it's a small one. And even if it's something you have to stretch and you know you're throwing your hat over the fence. I've got to climb over that fence. I'm going to force myself to do that. And I know those results are going to be there. If you had a winning lottery ticket and you knew it was going to win, how fast would you scratch it and go cash it in? The reason we don't, the reason we leave them on the counter or put them somewhere is because we're not certain. We don't have any certainty of positive outcomes, which was exactly what we talked about with confidence. I'm sure that something good is going to come, that things are actually going to work out. And that's the biggest difference. Every time that I made a big investment, I took out massive loans. I have zero debt right now, but I'm telling you, my credit score was in like the 500s for a decade or so. I took out so many credit cards to go to these courses, these seminars, everything I could to change the psychology. I'm giving you the best stuff I've ever learned in my life right now, as fast and like quick fire as I possibly can, because I do want to change your life. Even if I never meet you in person, if I never see you, I want you to just leave this meeting, even if I'm sitting on your iPad on your kitchen counter while you're cooking chicken. I hope this absorbs into your brain as you're watching this, because I do want you to walk away from this differently than you are right now.
Wow. How do you, I can't follow that. So I'm not even going to try. That was probably one of the most inspirational messages that I've seen and heard. And I know it's true. You know, the biggest changes I've ever had were when I invested in myself. And I remember the first time I wrote a check, literally. I took a cash advance on my credit card for $18,000 to join a mastermind.
Wow.
It was the biggest. I don't know that I'd call it a leap of faith. It was just something that I knew had to be done for me to take my life to the next level. And one of the things that inspired me was that the lady that was a part of this panel had said she had done exactly the same thing. She was scared. She didn't know if she could do it, but she knew it was the right thing to do. So she literally got a cash advance on her Visa card, wrote the check for $18,000, and in 3 months she made it all back and just kept going. And even though there were people on the panel who had made a lot more money than this lady had, there was something about what she said, that certainty in herself, that knowing that this was the right step to take. And so I did the same thing. I wrote a check. I wrote a cash advance on I think it was 17% on my Visa card, right? I wrote a check for $18,000 because I wanted to do that. I wanted to take my life to the next level. And within 3 months, I made it all back, and my revenues just kept going ever since. Now, what changed? Was it my life circumstances? No, I was in more debt than I was when I started. What changed was that crucible, that moment when we all say to ourselves, we deserve it. We're giving ourselves permission to take that step. And that's what we're going to do for you. We're giving you that permission. Give yourself that permission. Go ahead and click one of the links in the chat before we have to sign off.
And I'll follow up. Can I follow up on that?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So my mom, I had a great mom growing up, still have a great mom. No matter what, I was trying to breathe through my nose. I'm starting to cry talking about this, but I had a really great mom growing up. And no matter what was going on, I would text her like, I'm out of money, or I would text her X, Y, and Z. She would always write me back, maybe sometimes in a letter. I was on a deployment. Bloom where you're planted. That was her thing. She always told me, bloom wherever you're planted. and she meant well. And I think it's very good advice for most people. But it also kind of trained me into thinking that I can't change the soil. I'm a person. I'm not a tree. I can change the soil that I'm in. I can choose, I can take a gigantic risk because this soil is great. The soil is wonderful here. There's wonderful soil way over there. But if I get up and move over there, that's a risk. That's a massive risk. But if we are talking about being able to bloom where we're planted, that seed goes down, a little seed of an oak tree goes down into the soil. What's the first thing it has to do before it starts becoming an oak tree? The moment that it decides to become an oak tree, it stops becoming a seed. It has to completely cease being what it was to become what it's eventually going to grow into. And that quote has served me most of my life until I got to the next phase. Just blooming where you're planted is a wonderful way to have that tremendous sense of gratitude and control over what you're doing right now until you get to the point where you're ready to change your soil. You're ready to stop living in one part of this area, take a risk, get up and walk exactly over to where I eventually want to end up. And that's what I'm trying to do. I want to change your entire life. I want you to talk about me. I want you to talk about David forever. I want you to be able to look back at this even if just this one webinar that you're looking at and people on webinar just want to like sell the shit out of you. Even if you don't do this, if you decide to do it somewhere else, I want this to change your life. I want this to be the moment that I say, I'm not going to be a seed anymore. I'm going to make this transition, or I'm not going to live in this soil anymore. I'm taking a risk and I'm going to set course for exactly where I want to go.
Amen. Amen, brother. Hey, that's how much time do you have left for us, Chase? I mean, I know you're busy, so.
I can do probably about 5 or 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and just get to some questions. We'll try to answer them as quickly as we can. This first question is from, let me see if I can find it again. Oh, here we go. What are the top 3 things we should know about persuasion and how to be good at it?
Is this for me?
Yeah.
I think you should answer this too, damn it.
Well, I'll chime in after you.
Okay. So I think the top 3 things are understanding how we see people, how we communicate, and how we subconsciously transmit messages. So seeing people, understanding how to read people, understanding how to communicate to anybody, and then understanding that who I am when I'm off camera. If I'm a different guy off camera, like we shut off this webinar and then I go back to being some dickhead or some different human being, that's a big deal. And that stuff really does come through. If I'm sitting here saying you need to make your bed, you need to have more discipline in your life, and I'm not doing that in my own life, that's a big deal. And that comes through in your nonverbal communication and keeping in mind that every human being has been reading body language for millions of years. This is how humans talked before language existed. We are born knowing how to do this. And we can't really put our finger on it because that part of our brain doesn't speak English. So the biggest thing we can do is mitigate and manage how we live when we're off camera. When nobody's looking, are we the same person? And are we the person that we portray in real life? Because if I'm portraying somebody who's got all their shit together, and somewhere else in my life, I've got a pile of bills. My sink is full of dishes. I have piles of laundry that I had to do for the past 3 weeks that I put off and put off and put off. But I try to look like, oh, I have a job interview. Now I'm going to look like I'm put together. That is a big deal because we are sending unconscious signals of non-congruence. So I think if you remember right at the beginning of this, I said, persuasion should always start, if I'm planning to persuade someone, at the earliest point in time. So as far back as I can go. So I'm going to go back to these nonverbal signs of I'm not congruent. I don't mean really what I say. That's what gives people what we would call a gut feeling. Like we have a conversation, there's like, I talked to that guy, everything looked great on the outside, but something didn't feel right. Something was off. Something was unusual about that. That's our mammal brain sending a signal that says, yeah, don't trust them. So those are the three: observation, communication, and unconscious signals. What do you think, David?
I think you're spot on. One of the things that we teach is that everything human beings do is in response to a feeling. It's either a feeling they want more of or a feeling they want a whole lot less of. And so the fastest way to change a feeling in another human being is to change yours first. And the way we do that is through physiology. And you'll learn about this in Orlando, through physiological state control and what we call volitional state control. But it's all about being somebody. And going back to this whole idea of congruency, and how do you generate and portray maximum authenticity within the context and the identity of the person you're interacting with? What can you observe about these people? What do you know about them? What masks are they showing you? What do they want to be perceived as? Who do they want to be? And how do you work with that? So a lot of it is, who you are as a person, your identity, the information that you can extract, the ability to pay attention, and then the ability to inject influence, whether that's at the deep subconscious level through the body, like you're talking about, whether it's at the emotional level, whether it's at the linguistic level. But just like Chase was saying, we need to start at the most fundamental primordial levels, the lineal, the genetic level, I guess is a good way to say it. And if we can start leveraging our influence and our technologies from that base up, everything lines up and you get this maximum comfort, permission, and authenticity within the context in which you've created it. So I think, once again, who you are, who do they think you are? Who are you? Who do you need to be for them to become the person they need to be? And what are the influence techniques or the intelligence gathering that you can do that tells you how to navigate that map and align what they want with what you want? And then ultimately the tools of influence that you use to get there. So that's the I3 model in general. And I think that's where everything has to start.
I love that model because I got my start thinking about that model. Mm-hmm. And I think it's more important to have that model in your subconscious running in the background than it is to put it out on a sheet of paper before I have a business meeting, but to fully comprehend that I3 model that you have. This is why, for you, this is why David is the best in the world at what he does. He will absolutely change your life because these are the concepts he's hammering into your subconscious throughout the entire training to make you a different person, not just give you different techniques, but to give you different thought processes and skills, because information and skills are very, very different. And
amen, bro.
That's what David does.
Yeah. It's all about skills. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you know, it's what you can do.
Yeah.
And you've talked about that many times. And every time you say it, I want to stand up and say, testify, brother. Because it's absolutely true. There are two kinds of people who take action and those who are chronically overtrained. Right. And we want you to be the people who can actually do. Right. Quick question from one of our mutual associates, the amazing Jonah Ross, asks, how do you recommend we use hypnosis to augment behavioral profiling and influence skills, not using it on others, but using it on ourselves for enhanced skill development?
So using hypnosis on yourself and understanding your behavioral profile.
I think that's what he's asking, yes.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think understanding your behavioral profile, and I use the behavioral profiling with hypnosis. I rarely do any clinical work. Here, I'll be doing clinical work on a family member tomorrow. But that's kind of like the only time I do clinical work is a family or friend has kind of an urgent emergency or something happens. But the way that I use it in other people, I think, is the same way you can use it on yourself. So since everyone's here to influence other people, most of us, I'm going to give you that example, and I'm going to let you extrapolate exactly what I mean. And if I need to clarify, I certainly will. So here it is. The moment that I profile a person, the first thing we talked about this a bit ago is, what do they want me to feel like? I'm using that to set up a pre-frame. I'm using that to set up the pre-talk and induction of hypnosis based on what they need from other people, what they need to hear, the words, the sounds, the movements that they need to see from me based on whether or not they're confident, or closer down here to the unsure, insecure kind of side, which is fine for both. I don't judge either. That makes a massive, massive difference. Following that, I need them to make a decision. So knowing how that person makes decisions, and there's 6 ways, according to me anyway, there's 6 ways that somebody makes decisions. And if I want them to make a decision under hypnosis, they're still going to make it the same way that they do when they're standing in Best Buy, picking out a flat screen TV. So understanding how they make decisions is affecting whether or not I'm doing certain things in hypnosis. So if I'm writing a self-hypnosis script for myself, I'm including all of my behavioral profile. The trick is to make sure all of your friends and the friends that are going to tell you you're full of crap, if you're full of crap, also agree with that behavioral profile before you start developing that script. And hopefully that answers that. Thanks, JTR, for that question.
That's actually really cool, because one of the exercises that we do as part of the I3, the identity level, is what we call personal branding. Because everybody moves through the world with this idea of who they are versus how they want to be perceived. And then there's always a discrepancy between how the world perceives you and how you think you're being perceived. So we actually go through these question and answer processes where people literally get hardcore real world first impression feedback from each of the individuals, so they can see who they are versus how they want to be perceived versus how the world is perceiving what they're attempting to send out. And the whole idea behind that is to get congruent, so that the external, the image matches the impression, so to speak. Because many times what we think sends a certain type of message actually doesn't. And until you have the tough love kind of feedback to realize how what you're doing is being perceived, you don't actually know what direction to change. So again, feedback is the breakfast of champions. So when you were talking about this idea of going out to all of our friends and does that behavioral profile match, it just sent up a flag for me, because that's exactly what we're doing in I3 when we're doing the personal branding exercises and things of that nature. So it's really cool. Here's an interesting question that this is from Michelle. Says, I'm a bit confused about these techniques. How would one use them along with rhetorical ones? There are political and social actors who seem to be able to use rhetorical speech without professional body language and convince people to believe things that are not reasonable. Can you speak to that? Hopefully I read that well.
I think if I could answer that in like just a couple of minutes, I would be the richest man alive.
Yeah, really.
But I will say that anytime someone is defaulting to a technique of using rhetorical statements, I'll teach you first how to completely shut them down and disarm that technique. But second, I want to iterate how behavior profiling fits into that. So number one, if someone is using a technique against you to make you feel a certain way, here's a 2-step process for how to defeat it. If you're in a courtroom, a court of law, an argument, doesn't matter. I teach jury selection and trial consulting for a living, and I have a 300% money back guarantee if I lose the case. 300%, and I'm not cheap when it comes to trial consulting. So this is one of the techniques that I give to lawyers. If someone's using a technique on you, like rhetorical questioning or things like this, all you do is say, that's interesting how you're using XYZ technique. And I'm sure that makes most people do XYZ, how they want you to respond to it. Or you say something like, I recognize that I remember when someone taught me XYZ technique to make people feel XYZ. And I'm sure that works most of the time, but I want to have XYZ conversation here. So you bring up the name of technique, what it's designed to do, and then kind of come back to the conversation. And that's exactly, that disarms the entire thing. You're taking it out of this little dark concealed space and pulling it into the sunlight, where I am literally bathing in as the sun sets here. I've got a giant piece of soundproofing board here blocking the sun from my face. So the second way here, when we're in a conversation and someone's arguing with us or something like that, is to understand that number one, that person has good intention. Number one, step one, no matter how weird or stupid their argument is to you, they have good intentions. So you compliment that first. You start from a place of agreement. You say, I completely agree with, it really seems like you want to do X, Y, and Z, or you really care about such and such. I absolutely agree with you. And you always want to start from a place of agreement. Following that, you say, you really seem like the person who blank, blank, and blank. And that's where I'm going to profile that person's needs, their insecurities, and their decision-making process, which I wish I had a ton of time to go into that because I could never get tired talking about this stuff. I've been doing it for 20 years. I'm still pumped about talking about this stuff. I don't know why. David is too. I have not ever once gotten tired of talking about this shit. David and I have dinner together, or we have a cocktail together. That's the entire dinner conversation. We're not like talking about sports or anything else. The whole time we're together, we're talking about this exact stuff, even when we're hanging out alone.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. So here's the thing. We're coming up on time. I want to, first of all, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank each and every one of you for spending your evening with us, for putting your trust in us. A lot of you're brand new to Planet David. Some of you know about Chase's work, but I never actually had a chance to interact with him through my work and the things I've promoted that he's taught. I recommend you get everything he's got. They are massive leverage tools for everything we teach in Killer Influence. We don't have as much, again, we have literally hundreds of questions in the chat. So like I said before, here's my promise to you. If we did not get your question, and obviously we did not get to a lot of questions, a couple of things that you can do. When this video goes live on YouTube, which will be within a few minutes, really, after we log off, if you go to the comments section below this video and you retype your question, I will review the questions, and the ones that are directed to Chase, we'll get together over drinks. And as we get drunker and drunker, we'll have more interesting answers for you. And I will actually come back, and if Chase wants, I'll give him a guest membership on my channel. He can type your answers, or I can type them for him. But we will go back and we will do our best to answer every single question that you've had for us tonight. Have you guys had a good time tonight? Type in the chat if you had a good time, if you learned a lot. If we were to maybe do this again in the future, not saying we will, but if we were to do this again in the future, how excited would you be about coming back and playing with us a little bit more? Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. From the bottom of my heart to the master, Chase Hughes, thank you so much for spending the evening with us. I know you've got things to do, and I can't wait to connect with you out in Orlando. For those of you who are on the fence, when would now be a good time to click that link one final time? Make sure you've reserved your seat. And in the words of the immortal Carol Burnett, I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just got started, and before you know it, comes the time we have to say so long. Chase Hughes, thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks, David. Thanks for having me and inviting me into your life, your living room, your car, your kitchen, wherever you had me tonight. Thanks for having me with you. And from both of us, thanks very much, guys.
Good night and God bless you all. We'll see you in Orlando. Take care.